I don't know what's going on, man.
Here we
My
go.
brother, I don't. Oh, there you go.
Hey,
Wow.
brother.
Shalom, man.
Shalom, brother. How you feeling?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. How are you?
All praises, man. All praises to the Most High.
So just so you
Um,
know, this is my brother right here. There's no ill will between me and him. I respect this brother. You know what I'm saying? He's always been respectful and
Peace to the family. Peace to
always
the
showed
family.
love. You know what I'm saying? And I respect his work. So I just want to make sure you understand that we're not going at each other's head. It's not any kind of disrespect, anything like that. It's just trying to get edification and understanding in regards to the subject matter. So that's why I want to give a
Yes.
little introduction to the people. We're going to go over a few things real quick. And then I don't know if you're going to be available later on tonight. Ak, if so, then I want to bring you on to my YouTube channel so we can finish the discussion. And that way more
Okay.
people will be able to see the discussion. All right.
Sure. Sure.
All right, cool. So before we begin, Ak, just intro to the people real quick, your name, who you are, and what your stance is in regards to the feast days in Jerusalem.
Okay. Peace and blessings. Shabbat shalom to the family. Thanks again to my brother Ron Shields for having me on. Um, I've been learning a lot throughout the past, like roughly 3 years, about uh, Jerusalem and its location and different things like that. Um, the We have an elder in Jerusalem. His name is Elder Hoshua. He's the expert up there. Um, this information surfaced around 2009 that the location of Mount Zion was revealed. The word went out, and then it went out again in 2014 with our brother, one of our brothers. His name is Kenyon Ben Israel, and he put the call out for us to return to Jerusalem. Jerusalem has been hid from us for over 2,000 and something years, and I went up there, did the research and everything like that. So since I've been going there, I just been learning the old path. The scriptures tell us to seek the old path where the good way is, where we find rest for our soul. And when it comes to the commandment of Pesach, um, there's a certain way culturally that our people would keep the Pesach culturally. They would get a lamb on the 10th day, and they would keep it into the 14th. In between those days, they would feed it, treat it well, keep it into the 14th day, slaughter it, um, or clean it up, put the salt of the covenant on it, roast it with fire, eat it with their loins girded with bitter herbs and different things like that. So this is what we learn in Jerusalem, because the commandment told us to go to the place where the Most High put His name. So basically, these are the things that since we've been going to Jerusalem, we encourage all brothers to go to Jerusalem. I don't know what your stance on Jerusalem is, but I recommend that all brothers go up, get with Elder Hoshua, get all the information, and because Ron, Jerusalem, uh, it plays an important part in the future for us, and it's a place of safety for us during the times of the tribulation. We're going to have to be there. A remnant of us are going to be in that place. But I just encourage not to take nothing on face value, but just to go up and to get all the information that you can, and to make a conclusion for yourself with all the scripture and all the maps and all the different information. I encourage all brothers and sisters to start to turn back to Jerusalem, our resting place. And it's utterly amazing, Ron. When you get there, it's it's beautiful when we walking together. We up there, the people see us there, and it's just it bonds us together, because we know we at the right place. Once you get all the information, we know we at the right place, and we know we were rehearsing our righteous acts, just like the scriptures say. And we just come back, and we encourage brothers to get. Now you have some brothers that don't know the cultural aspect of of the Torah. Like it's a learning process. It's all step by step. You come into the truth, you find out you're an Israelite, then but it's as the walk goes, you start to learn more and more as you go on. So what we learning in Jerusalem
Mhm.
is cultural aspects of what's with the Torah that we've been stripped from, and different things like that. So I want to Passover is doing it according to how it was done in the land. Now, in America, since we've been scattered, can we do the Passover as it is written here exactly? No, probably not. You know what I'm saying? But to observe it, to acknowledge the day, then that's something different. But to perform it, it has to be performed in Jerusalem. That's what the scriptures say, you see. So, but I recommend you, Ron, because one thing I respect you, brother. You're a good brother, and I've been watching you. You represent the community very well. Big you up.
Appreciate you.
I've been trying to get you to come up, brother.
No,
You know what
I
I'm saying? I
know.
get you to come up.
And we still will, and what I'll say to
Yeah,
people is the brother Adoniyah is very generous in the fact that he's willing to contribute to anybody that wants to go to the land. You know what I'm saying? You
yeah,
say you put like $100 up towards somebody's flight.
yeah, yeah. So somebody's flight. Yeah, like I'm leaving out on the second to go up to Zion. I would love for you to come, brother.
If I
You
can
want
make
to
it,
come? I got you.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I got.
Bro, I know how you get down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got
If I can make it, I will. If not, then the best time for me to go would be
you. Yeah.
towards the end of the summer, right? Because I'll have way more time to be able to stay out there as long as I wish. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh, okay.
if I
Copy
if
that.
I
Okay.
can't make it this time, which probably won't happen because my schedule's a little bit busy, at the end of the
Yeah.
summer, going into early fall, before the fall feast, I'll be able to head out there and check it out.
Okay. But I wasn't. See the post that I made as far as like, not. It's Ron. This is a learning curve for all of us. It's continuously learning. Nobody got it all. I don't got it all. I'm still learning. Like once we get in Jerusalem, everything changes, bro. Yeah, everything changes. It's different. It's different there because your boots is on the ground and you actually doing. You putting the sickle to the corn. You bringing up the sheaves. We doing things that you can, and then we reading about it. It's just a step by step thing that we learning that we've been discontinued from. That the Most High is allowing us in these days, to exercise these things. He's opening up doors for us to go back. But what's happening is, a lot of the brothers in the house from the house of Israel, they not considering because we caught up on this thing waiting for Christ to come. We not supposed to be there until Christ get there, when the prophecy says that it's going to be a remnant of us there before Christ come. And it talks about us building up the old waste places in troublous times. So there's things that's going to happen to lead up to Christ's coming, from my studies. You know what I'm saying? Just from me
Oh,
personally
yeah,
studying and
yeah.
and knowing that, just observing. You know what I'm saying? But I know Jerusalem plays a very, very important part uh in these last days. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So for the Most High to reveal it in these times, it's utterly amazing. It's utterly amazing. Once you get there and you get all the information,
Mhm.
it just adds on to what and then you just start to see things a little different. It's all right to be corrected. You know what I'm saying? Okay, well, I wasn't right about this. This is how it's supposed to be done. And this is what I learned. Because when I used to keep Passover, I'm looking at it, but I'm not really looking, really examining the step-by-step process of the Passover. I wasn't really looking at it like that until Jerusalem was revealed. Then I was like, well, we have to be in the place that the Most High chose to be able to perform the Passover. You know what I mean? To be able to perform, because we have to kill before the house. You know what I mean? In Jerusalem. So that's what I've been learning, and that's what I've been practicing, and it's been working, man. Me and my family, you know, and I come at you, I come at brothers in love. You know, I might throw something out there, but it's all love. I
Mm-hmm.
love all the brothers. You know what I'm saying? I just want brothers to come up and consider the house of God. You know, consider the house because Ron, that's our resting place.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jerusalem is our resting place. And you know, once you get there, you get the information, then you know you can start, you know, elaborating on it, and then you know the people who follow behind you, you can start leading them up too, because that's our duty. It says saviors will come out of Mount Zion. The saviors in the last days, the saviors will come out of Mount Zion. So this is why all this information is coming out. Only the meek and humble is going to seek, you know, the Most High in Jerusalem. You know what I mean? So,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we got a lot ahead of us, Ron, in the
I
future. A
mean,
lot of stuff ahead
yeah. So
of
what I'll
us.
say is, thank you for joining the discussion. You know, the main reason why I call the discussion is I know that a lot of people have been, you know, talking about this thing for a while now. You know,
Yeah,
we should be able to keep the feast days. Can we keep it outside of Jerusalem? Does it have to be in Jerusalem? And you know, me personally, I haven't publicly spoken on it yet. I've discussed it in, you
right.
know, private conversations, small groups, and stuff like that. But I never
Okay.
publicly spoke on it, right? Because I definitely,
Right.
before I come out with my position, I definitely give people an opportunity to speak, to present their case, so I can hear it. So even if I disagree with people, I still learn, right? And that's one thing that
Absolutely.
I thank the Most High about, because even though you can disagree with somebody, you can still learn something from them, right? And
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't mean you
Oh yeah.
disagree on everything, just because there may be one or two
Right.
things you may disagree on. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that's why I wanted to tell the family that, you know, I really respect you. I appreciate you. I've been following. You've always been generous. You've always reached out to me. You've always shown love. And I haven't seen nothing
Absolutely.
other than that. You know what I'm saying? I watch your page when you go live. I just seen the thing you did about the new moon. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I watch your stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
I follow the brother's work. So this is not somebody that just don't want to jump on, just contend, just for the sake of contending, and not allowing a brother to speak, to put forth his position. He's saying, listen, the greatest insight you have in regards to the feast days or the Hagim is when you're there in the land and when you're in Jerusalem. You know, much more things are revealed. You know what I'm saying? Much more things are understood. And now when you have boots to the ground and you have your hand to the plow, you can really start to do real reconstructive work, right? You can actually live out
Yes,
what the
sir.
text is saying. So
Yes,
this is
sir.
why I
Yes, sir.
respect the brother's position on that, because he's not just saying this aimlessly. He's been there, he's put in the work, and he's come back, and he's trying to bring others there with him as well. So that's to be respected, and that's to be praised. You know what I'm saying? And I thank the Most High for brothers like him to be willing to do that. There's a lot of brothers out there, they're selfish. They don't care about bringing another brother up or bringing them out there and helping them out in the process. So I appreciate that with the brother. Now, what I wanted to do in this discussion, and again, this is just the intro, right? That I just
Okay.
want people to just brace themselves. We're gonna have a really good discussion. You see, the brother already got his word out. You see that right there? You see the sword right there? He got the word out
Yeah.
already. He don't play games. You know what I'm saying? He just finished teaching earlier. He about to go in again. So I appreciate that. So I just wanted to have like a preliminary discussion, and then we can have a more full in-depth discussion, right? So
Okay.
we can
So,
ask each other questions back and forth. I'm gonna give
okay.
you an opportunity to speak. I'm gonna speak, and if you ever watch anything I've done, I don't overtalk people. I don't disrespect people. I don't call people out their names, and I know you're not like that either. Because I'm not gonna go
No.
live with everybody. I'm not gonna have a dialogue with everybody because everybody don't have enough self discipline in order to conduct themselves like a man, right? And be able to talk. A lot of men are sensitive. They're in their emotions, you know what I'm saying? And they don't know how to keep that in check. So therefore, it's very difficult, not only for them to have a discourse, but also for the people that's watching to be edified in the process. You know what I mean? So what
Yes,
I
sir.
want to do is I want to ask you a question. I'll start off with asking you a question,
Okay.
let you ask me a question. We can go back and forth a little bit. And then I want to present some stuff to you, allow you to present some stuff to me. And then we're going to close it up for now and then wait till later. And the reason why I say that's because my household's still a little busy. So I don't want any
Okay.
interruptions because this discussion is extremely pertinent to where we at in this day and time. And I think that this is going to be edifying for everybody that's watching. Shout out to my brother Zion Looks in the
Absolutely.
building. What's good, Ak? All right. So um, the first question I want to ask you, Ak, is what is your reference scripture when it comes to keeping the Passover? Right? What scripture or scriptures, if you can give maybe two or three the most, you know, two or three witnesses, can you reference in order to tell us that it's a commandment for us to keep the Passover in Jerusalem? So if you don't mind,
Yes,
can you
sir.
please provide two or three witnesses for us? and then you can ask me questions, and we'll go back and forth. So you got the floor out.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The first scripture I want to go to is the book of Deuteronomy, the 16th chapter. Deuteronomy 16. Shabbat shalom to all the brothers and sisters who's watching. All praises to the Most High. All right, so I'm gonna read. I'm gonna start at verse 5.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me. I'm gonna start at verse 1, Ron.
Okay.
All right. It says, "Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God." I'm reading from the KJV, ladies and gentlemen. KJV. It says, "The Lord thy God, in the month of Abib, the Lord thy God brought thee forth out of the land of Egypt by night." Verse 2. It says, "Thou shalt therefore sacrifice the Passover unto the Lord thy God of the flock of the herd in the place which the Most High shall choose to put his name there." Okay. So the Most High right here is telling us that we are to sacrifice the Passover in the place which the Most High chose to put his name. Not eat, thou shalt eat no leavened bread. 7 days shalt thou eat unleavened bread there within, even the bread of affliction. For thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that thou mayest remember the day when thou came forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of thy life. And there shall be no leavened bread seen within all the coast 7 days, neither shall there be any flesh, anything of the flesh which thou sacrifice the first day at even, remain all night into the morning. Verse 5. Thou mayest not sacrifice Passover within any of thy gates, which the Lord thy God giveth thee, but at the place which the Lord shall choose to put his name there. There thou shalt sacrifice Passover at evening, at the going down of the sun, at the season that thou camest forth out of the land of Egypt. So the Most High commanded us to not slaughter the Passover within any of our gates, but in the place where the Most High chose to put his name.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to skip down to verse 16. Verse 16, it says, 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacle. And they shall not appear.
Go ahead. I'm gonna let you wrap up. I heard what you were saying, so I want to let you wrap up with what you were saying. Now.
Okay. I was
Yeah, read off the scriptures and you was expounding a little bit.
Yeah. I was on Deuteronomy 16, verse 16. I'm just gonna read that one more time.
All right.
It said 3 times in a year shall all thy males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose, in the feast of unleavened bread, in the feast of weeks, and in the feast of tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. So the Most High commanded our people to not slaughter within any of thy gates. And Passover in the ancient times, every man took a lamb according to his house, and they kept it into the 15th day. They fed all the leaven to the lamb, all 11. They get all the leaven out of the land by feeding it to the lamb, and they would keep it. They would keep it into the 14th day, and bring it down to the Jerusalem, and they would slaughter it before the house of God, which is in Jerusalem, because the Most High said we can only slaughter in the place where he put his name at.
Mm-hmm.
And my thing is, you know, where did he put his name at, you know, once they got to the land? Because see, when they was in the wilderness, but prior to them coming out of Egypt, they kept the Passover, you know, in Egypt. And then when they got into the land, they kept it in Jericho, in the plains of Jericho. They kept the Passover.
Did they keep it before they went to Jericho? When they exited?
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
They kept it. They kept it before. They kept it before. But see, but once the house was established, that's when that's when the commandment, everybody had to go down to Mount Zion. But I want to go to 2 Chronicles chapter 6.
Now wait, hold on. Now you're gonna follow up, right? You're gonna do more. I was just asking for like 2 or 3 to get started, because I was gonna give 2 or 3 as well, or allow you to ask me a question. So if you don't have a question, I'll just give a few scriptures, and this is just to set the stage, and then we can go into a few more if you don't mind. All right.
Okay.
So do you have a question for me? Otherwise, I'll just respond to the same question and just give a few scriptures.
No, I don't have no question for you at this time.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to start off with a few scriptures as well to get a lot of context, right? Because what tends to happen sometimes is that we don't. Sometimes we go to proof text to actually, you know, present our position, and sometimes we miss a little bit of the context. So when it comes to the Passover, what I want to do, I want to start in Shemot, or Exodus chapter 5, verse 1. All right. So I'll give you a moment so you to get there. And I'll give people a moment to get there as well.
Okay.
All right. So I'll give you a second.
Exodus chapter 5.
Exodus chapter 5, verse 1.
Okay.
All right. Let me know when you got it.
I'm here.
All right. So Exodus chapter 5, verse 1, I'm reading from the New American Standard Bible. All right. It says, and afterwards Moshe and Aharon came and said to Perao, thus saith Yah, the Elohim of Israel, let my people go, that they may celebrate a feast to me in the wilderness. But Pharaoh said, who is Yah, that I should obey his voice to let Israel go? I do not know Yah, and besides, I will not let Israel go. Verse 3, then they said, the God of the Hebrews has met us. Please let us go a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yah our Elohim. Otherwise, he will fall upon us with pestilence and with the sword. All right, so I'm going to stop there. So to expound on that, even before we get to the point where the Israelites are leaving out of the land, giving any instructions to the Passover, which goes in Shemot chapter 12 and forward, we start here in Exodus 5. So the Most High required for the Israelites who are calling out to him and requesting for him to redeem them from the ills that they're suffering in Mizraim. He is saying to them, if you want me to honor this, that Pharaoh has to let you guys go, right? Try to persuade him to let you go so you can sacrifice unto me. So the start of everything is Exodus chapter 5, where the sacrifice is a 3 days journey in the wilderness. That is what is first requested. 3 days journey in the wilderness, sacrifice. 3 things. 3 days, a journey in the wilderness, and a sacrifice. That's where this concept of slaughtering a lamb is first initiated. It's not fulfilled at this point, but it's initiated. So I'm going to go into 2 more scriptures. I think you gave 5 scriptures, 5 or 6 scriptures. Let me get 2 or 3 more scriptures, and then I'm going to let you go, Ak, okay?
Okay, yep.
All right, cool. So starting in Exodus 5, we have to build on context. So the next place we're going to go is Exodus chapter 8, verse 8 and 25 to 28. And then I'm going to hand it over to you. And if you want to bring other scriptures, you can. But what I'm doing now is my approach is interdisciplinary, which means that I'm going to start off with the scriptures. And then from the scriptures, I'll introduce other pieces of evidence that we can have a dialogue about to see if it corroborates what I'm saying, or maybe even what you're saying. Maybe you may have some external evidence that can also support what you're saying, right? So I want to be able to broaden. What happened?
No, I'm listening. I'm just saying, yeah.
Okay, I want to be able to broaden the dialogue so that way we have a full spectrum view of all the possibilities or all of the evidence that could be out there to help support either one of our points, right? So once we go from Exodus chapter 5, verse 1 to 3, we're going to go to Shemot chapter 8 or Exodus chapter 8, verse 8. And then 25 to 28, I'm going to read it. I'm going to expound upon it. And then I'm going to give it back to my brother so he can build, all right? Because this is what we're doing, we're building, right? So when we go to Exodus chapter
5, 28, you said?
Exodus chapter 8.
Yeah, okay, I got you.
Exodus chapter 8, starting at verse 8. So at this point, we have a plague that is occurring with the frogs in the land. When we go to verse 8, it says, Then Pharaoh or Pharaoh called for Moshe and Aharon and said, Entreat Yah that he remove the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go that they may sacrifice to Yah. All right, and we jump down to verse 25, and in verse 25 it says, because afterwards his heart was hardened, insects came, or the gnats came. At verse 25, Pharaoh called for Moshe and Aharon and said, Go sacrifice, pay attention, listen to this is important, right? Go sacrifice to your God, or Eloheka, within the land. So now Pharaoh saying, okay, he's thinking in his mind, listen, we're being plagued by these insects, right? He said, but I cannot afford to lose my labor force. But at the same time, I don't want this plague in the land. So what he's saying to them now is, okay, look, all right, go and do your sacrifice within the land of Mitzrayim. This is extremely important, right? Watch this. Because people say, oh, the Passover was kept in the land. But listen to this. But Moshe said, it is not right to do so. For we will sacrifice to Yah, our Eloheka, what is an abomination to the Egyptians. This is extremely deep because we never go to this before we go to the Passover scriptures, right? Now watch this. If we sacrifice what is an abomination to the Egyptian before their eyes, will they then stone us? We must go a 3 days journey into the wilderness and sacrifice to Yah, Eloheka, as he commands us. And it says, the last verse 28, Pharaoh said, I will let you go that you may sacrifice to Yah, Eloheka in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far. Make supplication for me. Now, pause. I'm going to expound, give the floor back to my brother. The reason why I'm going here is because when I survey the landscape, I'm looking for small nuances and subliminals that we typically overlook. Because once you're able to peel out these details, then you have extra pieces of the puzzle that helps you to better formulate the picture of what we're being shown. So what we can see here is that there's 3 requirements. The first one is 3 days journey. The second one is it has to be in the wilderness. The third one, that is a sacrifice. So Moshe, when he first approaches Pharaoh, this is what he presents to him about a sacrifice to Yah, a 3 days journey in the wilderness. Now, at this point, he's not speaking prophetically to say, hey, look, when we go into the land of Israel, there's Jerusalem in there. We got to make it there and sacrifice there. So you got to let us go so we can make it to Jerusalem. We don't see that being spoken of here. The important thing is a 3 days journey, the wilderness, and the sacrifice. So now Pharaoh, this is being implanted in his mind. He's saying to him, no, I'm not going to do that. You bugging out. Then Moses does the first 3 plagues, and it's replicated by the Pharaoh's magicians. Therefore, his heart is even harder. Like, oh, this is just parlor tricks. When they could not replicate the frogs, we had an issue. So now he remembered the first entreatment of Moshe to him saying, hey, 3 days journey, wilderness, sacrifice. So now at this point, once he sees that the frog can't be replicated, he goes to Moses and listen, all right, Moses, please go to your deity, tell him to remove the frogs, and I'll let you go that you can sacrifice unto Yah. So Moses goes, he does his part. Pharaoh's heart is hard and he doesn't do his part. So now it follows up with the next plague, the gnats or the insects, where now he is adding to his initial statement that he said to him about the frogs. Then he says to him, do your sacrifice, but do it in the land. Moses said, wait, if we in this land that is an abomination to the Egyptians, we're going to get stoned. So we can't do it under your prescription because the land of Egypt will see it as a abomination and they will stone us. So then what does Pharaoh says? He says to him, I don't know what happened to my brother. I'm going to give him a moment to get back on. My brother Adoniyah, if you can hear this, send me a request again so I can accept you. I don't know. It looks like your thing dropped off. But when we look at it again, now he's adding the additional details where he's like, all right. He said, listen, all right, go sacrifice to your power in the land. Moses says, no, we can't do it. It's an abomination. The Egyptians will stone us. We must go a 3-day journey in the wilderness too, and a sacrifice. So what this Pharaoh says, he says, I will let you go that you may sacrifice to your power in the wilderness. Only you shall not go very far. Make supplication for me because now that plague is on Mizraim and he wants it to be removed. So it says, then Moshe said, behold, I am going out from you, and I shall make supplication to Yah that the swarms of the flies may depart from Pharaoh, his servants, and from his people tomorrow. Only do not let Pharaoh deal deceitfully again and not letting the people go to sacrifice to Yah. Now, let's slow down. I'm waiting for my brother to jump back in. I do not know what happened to him, but until he comes in, I'll speak until he joins. So I rarely ever, when we talk about the Passover, I rarely ever see people go to these scriptures. I rarely see anybody go to these scriptures when it comes to Pesach or the Passover. And this is extremely important. As a matter of fact, let me do this. Let me do this. Let me go back to Exodus 5:1. And I'm going to finish expounding. I'm just killing time. And so my brother comes back in. I don't know what happened to him. I'll wait for him to come back in. But we achar ba'u Moshe, we acharon wa yomeru el paro ko amar Yahweh Elohei Yisrael salah et ami we yahogu li bam midbar. That's where we get that word for when we look at midbar, or we think of numbers, right? When you think of the wilderness wandering, because it really means it's the idea of the wilderness. So I'm reading this here because I want to point out some important things. That word hag, which means feast, we see it there, way yahog gu, so that we may hold a feast. See, that they may hold a feast unto his people. That word ami there, which is Yah's people. So Yah is claiming ownership to Israel. He's given the prescriptions on what must be done. So that way, once he redeems them, he can also be satisfied. So the initial sacrifice had nothing to do with the death of the firstborn. It had nothing to do with that. And all of this is going to come into play as we move forward. You're going to see. So when we look at this word, extremely important, chagag, right, or chageg, which is in the lexicon, it is our verb, which means to make a pilgrimage. Just like in Arabic, we have the word hajj. They're the same Semitic roots. And this means to make a pilgrimage. Why is this important? When we get to later on to Vayikra chapter 23, where it says that your males 3 times a year shall appear before me. These are the pilgrimage feasts, right? Where people normally travel to go and do these feasts. But initially, the feasts that he wanted, well, not wanted, but the sacrifice and the feasting would accompany the sacrifice had nothing to do with the death of the firstborn. This is extremely important to understand context. My brother Adoniyah, I don't know where you're at. I'm waiting on you to join in. I don't know where you at. Somebody tag them, inbox them, because I can't do it while I'm doing this. So you can join in. So when we move on to Shemot chapter 5 verse 2 is why yomer paor mi Yahweh asher esma bekolo lesala et Yisrael lo yadati et Yahweh v'gam et Yisrael lo asalea. So the key thing here is he's saying, I don't know. Yada. I don't know who Yahweh is. I don't know who this deity is that I'm going to just let you guys go. I don't know him. So I'm not going to let you guys go because I don't know him. This is important because now you get into the psyche of how the Nesut BT thinks. And Nesut BT is the Pharaoh and how he thinks. Because why would we go and allow our workforce to go and worship to a deity that is not sanctioned by our priests? Why would we do that? So the conversation goes, and it says, "Why yomeru Elohei ha'ibrim nikra alenu nelaka na derek seloset yamim bam midbar wedniz beha Yahweh Eloheinu pen yip gaenu badeber o behareb." Now look at this. Look at this. 3 days journey, derek, your journey is what? Seloset, which is a 3, or the word 3, journey 3, and yamim, which is plural for days. 3 days journey, you got the word bam midbar there, which is the word that we use also for the word of numbers, into the preposition, prefix, bait, into the desert or in the desert. Extremely important. 3 days journey in the desert, and now we have the word for sacrifice, which is that word zabach. So once you understand that they have to slaughter an animal after a 3 days journey into the desert, has nothing to do with the death of the firstborn at all. Moses says nothing about the firstborn dying, nothing about taking the blood, put it on a doorpost. That has nothing to do with the initial message. So once you understand this, you understand why when we're instructed to go and teach this to the children, and the children are going to ask, well, why are we doing this? And you got to tell them the memorial. You have to give them the full picture. The full picture. This is a lesson in itself. So the reason why I'm bringing this out, because it's extremely important for us to understand that this initial sacrifice, which is only going to be a 3-day journey in the wilderness, because they could not do it in Egypt initially, because Moshe was specific and he said, if we do this, that is an abomination to y'all, we will get stoned. So and the reason why would they get stoned? Because they're doing this to an unknown deity. An unknown deity. We will get stoned. So I'm waiting. I don't know what happened to my brother. I have no clue what happened to him. Can somebody please look for our brother and bring him back on? Or if somebody else wants to jump on who also holds to the doctrine that we have to only keep Pesach and now our Feast of Unleavened Bread in Jerusalem. If this is your position, you can jump in until my brother comes back on. But if somebody else subscribes to that, please go ahead and send a request. Let me bring you on, and we can dialogue until my brother gets back on, right? I don't want to make this a soliloquy or a monologue of any sort, right? Because I definitely want the other position to actually voice their opinion. Because once I go through a few scriptures, then I'm going to other extra biblical evidences that have to also be reconciled. It cannot be dismissed. It can't be overlooked. We have to reconcile this evidence. And that tends to happen sometimes in our community, is that people only stick to the scriptures and that's it. And therefore we start to have some issues. So what I try to do is read the scriptures in English, try to go back to it in Hebrew if I can, bring some stuff out in the grammar or the lexical value of certain words, and be able to derive a deeper peshat understanding of what is occurring, okay? Or even the deresh aspect, or even getting deeper to the sud level. People call the sud level. So what I'm saying is this: once we understand initially what Yah required of Israel, what the approach was to Paro or Pharaoh, Perao, we tend to understand now that this sacrifice was a 3 days journey in the wilderness. This had nothing to do with the land, getting into Israel, has nothing, because they can't make it there in 3 days. Getting into the land, going into Israel, going to Jerusalem, and making a sacrifice. So initially, it had nothing to do with that. So that's where I want to leave off. I want to leave off with the fact that initially the sacrifice that then will be called Pesach, they didn't even name it Pesach. It was just a regular zabach, a regular sacrifice. It wasn't even called Pesach at this point because nothing was skipping over or passing over. That didn't occur yet, okay? So it wasn't even called Passover. It was just a regular zabach in the wilderness to Yah. And then I'm just going to go over a few more scriptures after I let him speak. And then what I'm going to do when we talk later on tonight, in maybe about an hour, hour and a half, hopefully the brother's available, I'm going to get into the other interdisciplinary sources, right, that we have to address when it comes to this Passover Pesach. But like I said, family, always read for context. The context does not start in Shemot chapter 12. The context does not start in Vayikra chapter 23. 16. The context starts the first time that Moshe makes contact with Pharaoh. That's where the story starts. And that's what we have to address to see what was the initial intention of the sacrifice and what did it evolve to because of the hardness of Pharaoh's heart. Okay, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to try to add my brother again. Hopefully he's on. So, I really don't want to go forward until my brother comes in, or I know that he can't come in, because I want him to give him an opportunity to either respond or give his textual witnesses, right? So I want to be fair. I don't know if you sent that request, Yehuda, because this gave me the request for you. There you go.
Shalom.
All right, Shalom. Hold on one second. So my brother Adoniyah, drop out and come back in. All right. All right. So, all right. Shalom.
I just wanted to say something real quick. Shalom. I just wanted to add, because just on the topic, that when we look at Numbers 9, I was trying to bring this up to Milk Carnes in the past. When we look at Numbers 9, it shows. Hold on, baby. I'm on live real quick. It shows that when we are on clean or a journey afar off. I'm sorry.
It's okay. What verse in chapter 9?
Oh, I can't remember it off my tongue.
Okay, it's okay.
I know in Numbers 9.
I'll look while you're talking and see if I can bring it up. Go ahead, Ak.
Okay, yeah. In Numbers 9, it says that if you are unclean, the whole conversation, I'll give context to it real quick, is basically saying, like, somebody died. I'm gonna leave the room real quick. My son is crying. Watch him. Basically, there's two brothers that come up, and they were unclean because of reason of a dead body.
Exactly.
And it says that if somebody was to, they went to Moshe to try to figure out what was going on, what to do about it, so because they couldn't hold the Passover because they was unclean. And he said, I'm gonna go talk to Yah. And then Yah came back and said that they were right for coming. I believe that's what he said, that they were right for coming to him about it, and that he said if a person is unclean, or if they're in a journey afar off. Now the English should usually translate in a journey afar off, but then in the Hebrew though it just says like in a direct, basically in a way afar. If they're distant, that they are still to keep the Passover. And but the difference though is instead of the first moon, instead of them keeping it in the first moon on the 14th day, they're to keep it in the second moon, the second yara, on the 14th day. So I just wanted to add that in, that shows that we can keep the Pesach outside of the land.
Whoa.
That we can keep it. But when we're outside of the land, most of us, the majority of brews right now, they all are keeping it outside of the land, but on the wrong time period. They're doing it at the wrong moed. They're doing it during the first moon.
Yeah.
And
and that would be a different discussion because I seen your video on that, where you were given the recommendation for it to be done in the second month, right? So I seen your whole video on that. We got to have a discussion. That was a great video. I love how you put it down. Right. But yeah, so this part, I didn't even get it. I didn't even leave Shemot yet. Right. We still in Exodus.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't want to interrupt your context. I'm listening to you. I'm trying to see what you're saying. I just wanted to throw that in there.
No, look.
I just want to throw that in there.
Because this goes within context with what I was saying in Shemot. Right. We didn't even get to chapter 12 yet. So when you understand that we have the word direct, remember I was reading it in Hebrew, that same word is there as well. You're going to have, when you guys are going 3 days journey in the wilderness, give me a sacrifice. That was the prescription initially for that sacrifice. And remember, that sacrifice was supposed to be a memorial to Yah, a memorial unto Yah, because he was intervening in a situation where the Israelites were being subjected and they did not agree with their subjection, and they requested to get salvation, because when Moshe met with Yah in Midian, this is where he met the deity at in Midian, he said, I've heard their cries, and because he heard their cries, he's going to honor the covenant he made with their forefathers, not because they did anything in their own power. He was remembering the covenant. So this part number 9, that's another just swath, right? But even before we get to 12, I just want people to see the context of what was the importance of any sacrifice. And it wasn't to go into the land. It wasn't to say, oh, we got to be in Israel first in order to do it. That happened as a result of a circumstance, because you'll see in the Torah, there's no prescription that it must be done in Jerusalem. It's not in the Chumash, the first 5 books. It's not there. And it's like that for a reason. We don't see that until later on, when reforms are being done in the land and the power has to be centralized, because what happened to the northern tribes. That's a totally different subject matter that we're going to get into.
Okay, yeah.
But I want to say,
another thing.
Get out.
Sorry. Another thing I see that people don't know, Pesach and the Feast of Unleavened Bread are 2 different things. Pesach is the slaughtering of the lamb, the Feast of Unleavened, and then when you eat it that night at sundown, because you do it between the evenings, and then you eat it that night, that's a whole different feast. So the Feast of Unleavened Bread is the feast that is prescribed to be at the place he set his name, but the Pesach is not. It's completely separate feast.
And that's deep. Now look,
and the unleavened bread is you got to eat in the land, but the lamb itself, that is for, you can do that anywhere as long as it is in the second moon, though.
So I'm gonna let you stay there. That was great. I'm waiting on my brother to come back in. I think I see that he's here, but it's not letting me. I think because you're on. So if you don't mind, can you drop off for a second?
I'm gonna drop out.
Yeah,
drop me out.
But I owe you a discussion. Hold me to that, because you're supposed to have one a while back. So hold me to that, all right? And the next time I do this live like this, I'll bring you on. We can rock, all right?
Okay, I have a request then. The discussion, I would like it to be on the topic of the Shabbat.
Okay.
So in the future, I'd like to, because I just want to add, like, on the new moon, you were recently, I don't want to get off topic, from what you're talking about, but just real quick, you were pointing out to me, I asked you to send me that video about why you think
I got you.
that the new moon is on the full moon. And I was just reading yesterday, and I was talking to somebody else about the Sabbath and the lunar Sabbath, and I don't know if you adhere to lunar Sabbath. I still don't understand why people adhere to the Gregorian week being for the Sabbath, and I don't want to get distracted too much, but I'm just wanting to make a quick point, is that might be in your favor, is that I saw that the first Sabbath that we hold in Shemot happened on the 15th. It was prescribed on the 15th day and then held on the 22nd day. So I thought of you, and I thought about the full moon being the new moon, and if in fact, it would be the 15th day. It makes sense, because you got the 15th day, and then 7 days later, then you'd have this Sabbath. And it's like, why would y'all wait until the 15th day to prescribe the Sabbath and then 7 days later hold it, as opposed to having it on the first day of the month and then so on. So, but that's a different topic. I don't.
And I think on that, I still have in my, when I look at my plans for this year, as far as the roadmap of lectures that I want to give, the Sabbath is one of them. where I'm gonna try to cover all the perspectives out there, go into the provenance of each position, and be able to look at internal and external evidence to see what is the best argument for how the Shabbat should be kept. Because I know that's a big discussion in our community.
Yeah, it
And I
definitely
was
is. We
waiting
need to
until
have
I
it in
had that, until I did that lecture to be able to openly have dialogue. But what I'll do for you, if you want to talk about it briefly, we could talk on it briefly. I have no problem with that. But I may not
not
go
right
that in
now
depth until I do.
because the brother, he's back, and this is y'all's. This is y'all's
I
live,
gotcha.
and my wife is yelling at me about eating anyway right now. The food is done, so
Exactly.
I'm gonna keep watching. I'm gonna keep watching. Thank you for bringing me on and just
Anytime.
hearing what I had to say, and I'm gonna keep watching.
All right, Malek, shalom.
All right, much love to y'all. Shalom, shalom.
But y'all go ahead and share this link because it's getting lit. My brother got some information he's gonna come back and edify with. So I stopped at Shemot chapter 8 or Exodus chapter 8. There's a few more scriptures that I want to give to kind of lay the foundation so people can understand a few things. My brother Yehuda that jumped on, he already revealed the Bad Midbar or Numbers chapter 6 verse I was going to use towards the end, but it's okay. It's okay. Because I want to show something that's a seeming contradiction. Because remember, we say that it should not be done within your dwellings, but be done in the place that Yah has set. But then when we read before that, it says, for it to be done in all of your dwellings as a perpetual statute forever. That looks like a contradiction. But if you understand the composition of the Chumash or the Torah, you understand why it looks that way. How you can harmonize it once you understand the composition. And I wanted to get into that as well. Hence why interdisciplinary studies is extremely valuable, and being able to derive, or what we do when we do a midrash, we seek out the understanding and we extract it, right? So I really wanted to get a little deeper as far as that's concerned, just to kind of lay out the foundation before I jump into external evidence, right? But again, I'm waiting on my brother Adoniyah to join in. Somebody please tag him in this. Inbox him, post on his page, let the brother join in so we can wrap this part up and hopefully have enough time to start later on tonight. All right. I was not anticipating for it to be this long, and all of this Facebook technical issues is crazy. It cut me off the first time when I went to go multitask on my phone. It dropped him off the second time, and I couldn't get him back on I couldn't invite him back on the discussion. And now I don't even know where he's at. Hopefully he's seeing this so he can join back in. And that was Numbers 9, of Bimidbar chapter 9. And that's starting at verse 9, where it says, then Yah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, if any one of you of your generation become unclean because of a dead person or is on a distant journey, he may, however, observe Pesach to Yah in the second month on the 14th day at twilight. They shall observe it. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall leave none until the morning, nor break a bone of it. According to all the statute of the Passover, they shall observe it. But the man who is clean and is not on a journey and yet neglects to observe Passover, that person shall be cut off from his people, for he did not present the offering of Yah at its appointed time. That man will bear his sin. And this has to do with the Israelites being in Haaretz, in their sovereignty, right? But I don't even want to get to Bamidbar chapter 9 yet. Matter of fact, I'm going to wait for the brother to join in. I'm going to bring out a few more scripts real quick. Right? So we're going to get to Shemot chapter 10, verse 8. I'm going to read this while I wait for the brother. All right, where it says, so Moshe and Aharon were brought back to Pharaoh. This is after the plague of the locusts commenced. And he said to them, go serve Yah, your power, or Eloheka. Who are the ones that are going? So now, again, there's a buildup in this discussion now. Remember, Moses gave 3 requirements that he had to do on behalf of Yah. They had to take a 3 days journey in the wilderness, and they had to have a sacrifice or a zabach. That's what they were supposed to do. Had nothing to do with putting blood on a doorpost. Had nothing to do with the firstborn getting killed. It had nothing to do with any of that. everything progressed and evolved to that point due to the hardness of the Nesibiti's heart, or the Pharaoh's heart, right? So in Exodus chapter 10, verse 8, now we see, now Pharaoh is inquiring for more details. He's saying, who are the ones that are going? Moshe said, we shall go with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, with our flocks and our herds. We shall go, for we must hold a feast to Yah. Now, let's get into that. Let's get into that. This is, I don't know what my Stone Edition Tanakh is. But let's get into that so we can see what's going on here. So we have Why Yomer Moshe bin Arenu Ubis Kenenu Nelech Be Banenu Ubib No Tenu Be Sonenu Ubib Karenu Nelech Ki Hag Yahweh Lanu. The word we want to hone in on is that word Hag, which means a feast. This is extremely important because look at this. As we see in the development of this discussion, we see that Hagag or Hagag is first mentioned when we see this word for a feast or a gathering earlier, remember? Now we see just Hag by itself. Really interesting. We see a development in this discussion that it began as something that was interestingly about a pilgrimage because they had to leave 3 days journey, right, in order to do the sacrifice. And now you see a situation where it says, he's saying, look, we have to take this young and the old. We have to take the sons and our daughters. We got to take our flocks and our herds, and we will go for a feast to Yah. So remember, Moshe, now we see now a feast is added. So now we got the 3 days journey, right? Then we got the wilderness. We got the zabak or the sacrifice. Now we have the hag or the feast. Again, this has nothing to do with blood being plastered along the doorposts. Has nothing to do with the death of the firstborn. It has nothing to do with any of that at this point. We see a developing revelatory discussion that is occurring between Moshe and Paro and the Sibiti, based on the hardness of his heart and him not hearkening unto the request from Moshe and Aharon on behalf of Yahweh, because of the request to go into the wilderness for 3 days to feast, because Pharaoh, he wanted to meet a particular deadline. There was a quota, and he's like, no, this is going to throw everything off. All right. Again, I'm still waiting for my brother Adoniyah. Somebody please tag him on here. I know they're trying to tag a brother named Pilgrimage to Zion. If he wants to join in, he can definitely join in as well. Or if anybody wants to join in who subscribes to the notion that we can only hold a hag or a feast related to Pesach, Passover, in the land, definitely shoot a request and I'll bring you on. But when we go here, we see something very interesting. We see that a request is asked, who's going? He's saying we got to take our young, our older, sons and daughters, our flocks and herds, and go hold the feast. And then it said, then he said to them, thus may Yah be with you. If ever I let you and your little ones go, take heed, for evil is in your mind. Not so. Go now, the men among you, and serve Yah, for that is what you desire. So they were driven out of Pharaoh's presence. So now we see a situation where Pharaoh is like, okay, take the men. Just go with the men. Do what you got to do and come back. Leave the women and children here. Leave the herds and the flock. Leave all of that here. You know why? Because that is a collateral to ensure that you will return. Then Yah said to Moshe, stretch out your hand, the land of Egypt, that they may come up out of the land, eat of every plant. This has to do with the locusts. He stretched out his hand, etc., etc. So why am I bringing this up? Because again, we see the development of this Chag or this Zabach that is being required by Yah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, brother, we can't.
Real.
Oh, this is great.
I'm glad I got you one. So I'm gonna stop because I think I said enough in your absence, waiting for you to come back on. But
Okay.
I'm gonna allow you to give a response if
Okay.
you want, or if you have
Okay.
additional scriptures that you want to share, you
Okay.
can. But the floor is yours, Ak.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I just want to address the point where you was talking about, you know, when Moses went to Pharaoh and told Pharaoh to allow us to go out and to, you know, make the feast a 3 day, you know, 3 day journey to make the feast to sacrifice to the Most High, or the case may be. So throughout the course of Israel's journey, some things was, you know, Moses was commanding the children of Israel that, you know, once they got into the land, that, you know, once they set up a place where the Most High put his name at, that all of that is dead. And they was only required to go to the place where the Most High, you know, where the Most High put his name. And I just wanted to say something with Yahuda, the brother that came on and talked. He was talking about Numbers 9, where, you know, if you're unclean or if you're in a journey or far off, you can only keep it. You're supposed to keep it in the second month, and according to the ordinance and how it was given. See, the only reason why, you know, we're supposed to keep it in the second month is because, well, we're supposed to keep it in the second month, but still in the place where the Most High chose. That's why he told him in the second month. If you can't make it the first month of your unclean, you do it the second month in the place where the Most High chose, because we can only slaughter the Passover lamb before the house. That's the commandment. When we read in Deuteronomy 16, verse 5, he tells us this: we cannot slaughter within any of our gates. That's the commandment going forward, but only in the place that the Most High chose. So I'm gonna go to Second Chronicles chapter 6 right quick. Second Chronicle chapter 6. Second Chronicles chapter 6, I'm gonna start at verse 5. I'm reading from the KJV. It says, since the day that I brought forth my people out of the land of Egypt, I have chose no city amongst all the tribes of Israel to build an house in, that my name might be there. Neither did I choose a man to be ruler over my people Israel, but I have chosen Jerusalem, that my name might be there. And remember, the commandment went forth where we were supposed to bring, Moses told our forefathers in Devarim chapter 12, he told them, he says, after the things that you're doing here today, you know, we should not do what we're doing today out here. You know, when we get into the land, the Most High is going to set up a place, so where to put his name at. So therefore, when that place was established, that was the place where all of our tithes, all of our free will offerings, everything went there. Even when you look in Second Chronicles chapter 30, you see there Hezekiah sending out letters to all Israel, telling them to return. Let me turn right there, right quick, Ron.
Okay.
Second Chronicles chapter 30. So once the Israelites got into the land, and the Most High chose Jerusalem, everything that we was doing prior to that all changed, because the Most High now set up a place where we can go. And unfortunately, you know, our people stopped keeping the Passover in the land and started worshiping the gods of the heathen or whatever. Second Chronicles chapter 30. I'm gonna start at verse 1. It says, "And Hezekiah sent to all Israel and to Judah, and wrote letters to Ephraim and Manasseh, that they would come to the house of the Most High in Jerusalem to keep the Passover unto the Most High." And this is because that was a commandment going forth. You know, so once the tabernacle was set up and the Most High put his name there, that's where we were supposed to go. So being that Jerusalem has been hidden from us, we've been scattered all over the place, and we've been discontinued from our heritage. Now we coming into the truth, and now it's levels, like I was saying, it's levels to the walk. And now once you go into the land, now you start to understand the demographics of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I was saying, it's all a learning. It's all a learning process. How you doing? Shabbat shalom. I'm gonna finish reading down a little bit, Ron. Anything you want to say, brother?
Nah, go ahead. I'm gonna let you.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. Jerusalem at verse 2. It says, "For the king had taken counsel and his princes and all the congregation in Jerusalem to keep the Passover in the 2nd month, for they could not keep it at its time because the priests were not sanctified themselves officially, neither had the people gathered themselves to Jerusalem." You see, because everybody was doing what they felt right in their own heart. Even
Mm-hmm.
when the commandment went forth, they was like, once Jeroboam became president up there, he led all Israel astray. They stopped going down to the house of God because he had established his own thing up there. So he had everybody not going down to Jerusalem because he was scared that if they was go to the house of God, that he would lose everybody. So this is why we point the way back to Jerusalem for the children of Israel, to consider the house of God. Verse 3, it says, verse 4, it says, "And this thing pleased the king and all the congregation, so they established a decree to make a proclamation throughout all Israel and to Beersheba, even unto Dan, that they should come to keep the Passover unto the Lord thy God of Israel at Jerusalem. For they had not done it for a long time in such sort as it was written." And this is what we taught. This is what we saying. We want to keep Passover as it was written. And the only way we can perform it is in Jerusalem, because that's after we got to the land, the Most High established that place. He put his name in that place. And that's when this is what he says in 2 Chronicles 7:14. He tells us, he said, "If my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and seek my face," and his face is in Mount Zion.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "I will heal their land." So what's going on now, the gathering started in 1967 with the brothers and sisters from Dimona, when the Most High brought them back into the land. So now, 40-something years later, 50-something years later, and now another small portion of us are start to consider.
Mm-hmm.
You see, they start to consider. And so now, and like I was saying earlier, we learning the ancient paths. This is a good thing that's going on, Ron. We learning the ancient paths.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's so much information. Once you find out the location, it's just so much more information to go with that place, because we know that before the Messiah comes back, we have to go back. We have to build back up the old waste places. The Antichrist has to come in. 2 witnesses have to come. All these things have to take place in Jerusalem. So once you get all the information, you find out what Jerusalem at, it's just wide open now. Now it's just everything starts to make that much more sense. Now we know where to go. Once it's time to go, we know where to go. Our forefathers went back in the ancient times. They were given reparations to go back. Through Cyrus, he made a case for reparations, and they went back and they built back up the tabernacle and everything like that. So the importance of us keeping the feast there and everything, we trying to do it like the scriptures say, as it was written.
So let me ask you a question then. So in the Humash, or the first 5 books, right, what we call the Torah, right, is there a specific prescription for us to keep Pesach in Jerusalem? Because that's the key thing. Is there a prescription there? Does it say it explicitly there in the Humash, the first 5 books, that we are to keep it in Jerusalem?
Well, it doesn't name in the first 5, but it doesn't say Jerusalem,
Mm-hmm.
but it says where the Most High put his name.
Mhm.
You know, where the Most High put the place that he chose.
So if the
So we know.
Israelites, if they got this Chumash from Moshe, let's say they got it from Moshe, right?
Mhm.
And Aharon and maybe the Kohanim, right? And they're
Mhm.
going into the land with just the first 5 books. How
Yep.
do they know where to keep Passover?
How did they know where to keep Passover?
If the
Well,
prescription for Jerusalem is not
mhm.
there in the Chumash, whether it's within context, whether it's prophetic, or whatever the case may be, how will they know where to perform Passover?
Well, this is the thing. When we first got into the land, the you know the place to go was Shiloh. They went there first. That's where the Most High put the ark was there. But see now, once David took the strongholds of Zion, that was the place where they established as the capital. It wasn't until 100 and something years later until Mount Zion was established, and that's when they started to go. But in the midst of all of that, once they got in the land, it doesn't really specify exactly where they was keeping Pesach at every year. But we know once the Most High established Jerusalem, that was the place for us to commanded us to go
So
yearly.
did the Most High place his name somewhere else before Jerusalem?
Well, we have Mount Sinai. That's another holy mountain. But
Hmm.
his name, no, I don't know if his name is in another place where we're commanded to go to keep the feast days.
Okay.
I only could read in the scripture that we're supposed to go to the place where he put his name, and his name is in Jerusalem.
Gotcha. So, all right, and I'm asking these questions for a reason, right?
Okay.
What I want to do is lead into Shemot chapter 12, which we are all extremely familiar with, right? When we read the
Yep.
Passover lamb, which is the first chapter 1 to chapter 13, right? Where it's giving them instructions. Because now, you know, Pharaoh has hardened his heart. Now they're forced to do this in the land. Remember, they did not want to do the sacrifice in the land. They didn't want to have the zabach. They didn't want to have the chag or the feast in the land because they said that they would be stoned if they had it in the
Right.
land, right? So
Mm-hmm.
after all of these plagues occurred, we have a situation where now the last plague is about to commence because Pharaoh has still hardened his heart and he is not allowing them to leave. What I said before previously was that Pharaoh asked them, because remember, it's developing progressive discussion where Pharaoh's now making additional inquiries where he's like, who's going? Moses said, our young and our old, our sons and our daughters, the herds, the flocks, all of us got to go. And Pharaoh
Yeah.
says, all right, just let the men go. Just let the men, y'all go ahead and go do your thing, and we're going to keep everybody else here. So
Right.
with that, Mosai said, okay, I'm gonna honor that. And Moses, stayed the plague. So the plague wouldn't keep going, but then Pharaoh still hardened his heart. So now we had a
Yeah.
situation where now we're giving a name to this Zabach. Because previously this sacrifice did not have a name attached to it. And that's when we look at the word Pesach, which literally means to pass or to skip over, right? Because now
Mm-hmm.
the judgment of the plague is not going to afflict Israel because they follow the instructions, which is placing the blood along the doorpost so that the angel of death is skipping over them and it's only afflicting those who have not followed those instructions. So what I really want to zone in on is when we scroll down and we go to in Shemot chapter 12 and we jump down to verse, I would say, let me do verse 24 because I want to pull something out because what we see, like I mentioned earlier, is that in Shemot, instructions are given for the Israelites and in Vayikra or Leviticus for them to keep their Passover and Feast of Leavened Bread in all of their dwellings as a perpetual statute. And that's what was mentioned there. When we get to Deuteronomy says you cannot keep it in your dwellings. You must slay it in the place where he chose to place his name. And now additional prescriptions is given. Now, this is extremely important because remember, we know Deuteronomy is supposed to be the second reiteration of the law or the mitzvah vote that was already given previously. It's the second iteration, right? So when we get to verse 24, and it says, and you shall observe this event as an ordinance for you and your children forever. Verse 25 says, when you enter the land which Yah will give you, as he has promised, you shall observe this rite. And it says, and when your children say to you, what does this rite mean to you? You shall say, it is the Passover sacrifice to Yah who passed over the house of the sons of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians but spared our homes, and the people bowed low and worshiped. So the reason why I had asked you that initial question is because I said when they left out of Egypt, they were in the wilderness for 40 years. They entered into the land, and they was in a land for a good amount of time before David and Shlomo or Solomon came on the scene.
Yeah,
Before
absolutely.
that prescription is made, they were to keep the right when they went into the land based on what they are mandated here in Exodus chapter 12. So if we read from the point of the Exodus to the point of Judges, to the point of Samuel going up to David, and then Saul, David, and then Shlomo or Solomon, the question is, where are they keeping Passover? Now, I'm going to say this point, and I'm going to let you rock. Because I want to build a little bit more. But when we get into Vayikra, chapter 23, we are given the instructions for all the Passover, all the feasts, the Hagim, all the feasts, and the Sabbath is reiterated in Vayikra chapter 23, right? So let's go there real quick. Let me pull something out real quick. All right. And it says here, going into verse 26. Not 26. I'm sorry. Let me jump up. It's in verse 4. It says, these are the appointed times of Yah, holy convocations, which you shall proclaim at the times appointed for them in the first month on the 14th day of the month. At twilight is Yah's Passover. Then on the 15th day of the same month, there is the feast of unleavened bread. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. On the first day you shall have a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work, but for 7 days you shall present an offering by fire to Yah. On the 7th day it is a holy convocation. You shall do no laborious work. So now we see a situation where now we're giving you a reminder on how these things are supposed to take place. It goes on to further tell you in verse 15 on, where it says, you shall complete for yourself on the day after the Sabbath, from the day you give the sheep and the offering, blah, blah, blah. But when we jump down to verse 21, it says, on this same day you shall make a proclamation. You are to have a holy convocation. You are to do no laborious work. It is to be a perpetual statute in all your dwelling places throughout your generations. So now we see this being added as well, saying that in all your dwellings, this part, at least if we say it's the Shavuot or the week's portion, that is supposed to be done in all your dwellings. And then we see a confirmation from Yah where he's telling them that 3 times in verse 37, it says, these are the appointed times that you shall proclaim as holy convocations, present fire by Yah, burnt offerings, grains, etc., etc., because all these things also have to be done along with the other feasts that we're doing. So offerings have to be given as well, because remember, we saw when they had their feast or their hag, they had to give a zabak or a slaughtered animal as a sacrifice unto Yah, and this is what was being requested, right? So it says here, was that other verse that I just saw? Boom. Oh, it just escaped me. Hold on, let me find it.
Okay. Phone is acting crazy too. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Mine was glitching a little bit as well. Oh, that's where I meant to go.
This is what happened last time.
I'm sorry.
This happened last time.
Oh, can you hear me?
Shemot chapter 1.
You good?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Don't scare me, man.
Yeah, I'm good. No.
All right. All right, chapter 23,
Shemot chapter
right?
what?
23. Starting at verse 14. And then from here, then I'm gonna hand it over to you and let you rock, right? So it says 3 times a year, you shall celebrate a feast. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For 7 days you're to eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you at the appointed time in the month of Abib. For in it you shall come out of Mizraim, and none shall appear before me empty-handed. And you shall observe the feast of harvest, the first fruits of the labor, also the feast of ingathering. At the end of the year, you shall gather in the fruit of your labors from the field. 3 times a year, your males shall appear before Yah. Now, when we see verse 17, again, we see no prescribed specification for this to occur in Jerusalem. Again, we don't see Jerusalem stated here in the Chumash or the Torah, the first 5 books of Moshe. We don't see Jerusalem nowhere here, and that's like that for a reason. Because listen, if we're going to say, look at this, we're going to say that Moshe was a prophet or a Nabi, right? That he was a prophet, right? And he gave a prophecy. If you look in Deuteronomy chapter 16, right? There's a prophecy about a prophet that was going to come, and the Most High going to put his words in his mouth, and people better hear from him, etc. We can say Moshe, would you agree that Moshe also was a prophet or a Nabi? Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay, so if he was a prophet, then that means that he would also have some insight in regards to giving specific instructions. Because when you read this, it's very specific on what to do, except for the full prescriptions on how to actually slaughter the animal. And that's where halakha comes into place. But if we see it, he's very specific, but he never mentions Jerusalem anywhere. It seems as if that was a development after they got into the land and after certain circumstances occurred. Because remember, the king being the agent to establish Jerusalem as the place where Yah places his name wasn't even supposed to happen. Because when we read 1 Samuel chapter 7, 8, and 9, it was the people that asked for a king. Prior to that, Passover was still being kept, but it was not in Jerusalem. So the people were still keeping it like they were prescribed, like I read previously in Shemot chapter 12, and it's saying that they have to appear before Yah 3 times out of the year, and he mentions what those 3 times are, very specifically the Feast of Unleavened Bread, Shavuot, and the Sukkot. He mentions those things, but again, we're never given a prescription for Jerusalem. And there's a reason why Jerusalem is not mentioned. We think it's because, okay, well, he decided to put his name someplace much later when they decided to build the temple, and now that's the place where people have to go and worship. That means everybody before that had no revelation on where to go when they went into land to keep their feast days. And remember, all the people had, when they went into the land was divvied up. Every tribe was somewhere different. They was somewhere much different. Instructions were given, hey, if you're distant and you're not in the meeting place where my name is at to meet up, now you're going to be considered either unclean or you could be cut off if you don't keep it in the 2nd month. But the reason why we hear these instructions, because there was no centralized specific location on where to keep Pesach. It was wherever the people could uniformly and centrally meet up that was convenient. And as we read the narrative, it shows us different places that was considered holy. One of those places, and I'm going to leave off with this because, like I said, I promise I'm going to let you speak. One of those places that was touted by tradition, one of those places that was touted by tradition, because, again, it's not specific, is Mount Gerizim. So Mount Gerizim is also a Kodesh, or a set-apart place in which Pesach can also be performed, because we see an essence of Yah's name. When he says my name, is when you would use the word Shem, or we say Shem, when we use that word, are we referring to his literal name? Got to be written somewhere. So look, I put the Most High's name, Yod He Wav He here, or his character, or a feature, or a function, or encounter where a memorial stone is placed. When it says his name, what is the designated element that has to be present in order for the people to centrally gather and know this is where we are to keep Pesach. Because again, according to one tradition by another group of people who lay claim to be Israelites, is Mount Gerizim. And if we don't address that to say, okay, why would this group think it's Mount Gerizim and this group say, no, it's Jerusalem or Jerusalem? Why is there some kind of dispute if the Chumash or the Torah is supposed to be precise on giving us instructions on what we are supposed to do? I'm going to give you the floor. I want you to build. Can you hear me out? Oh, man. Yehuda, but I wanted to give the floor to my brother, and he got kicked off again. I don't know what's going on, man. You get this? I need you to jump back in. So Brian Franklin said they did find his name, Yod Hey Wafe, in Tel Arab. I don't know what happened, my brother Adoniyah. Send me another request. Let me add you. I'm waiting. I don't know what's going on now. They kicked my brother out again. It says that he's already invited. I can't even send him an invite. My brother Adoniyah, come out, close the application, come back in. Let me add you one more time. Because I don't even know if I'm going to be able to do this, my YouTube live stream tonight. I may wait till after the Shabbat tomorrow to do it. Yehuda, bring that scripture out. Post the scripture in the chat, because I know where you're going at with it. Post the scripture in the chat. Let me see if my brother wants to get there and we can have that discussion. So I'm going to wait for him to jump on. And while we're waiting, this is why I want to get into textual criticism. This is why I want to deal with textual variance. This is why I want to deal with the composition of the text, the style of the text, some seemingly or apparent inconsistencies, some doublets in the text. All of these things are extremely important. These are the features of the Chumash that is observed objectively, and theories are created in order to explain why we see these things there, right? Because when we understand that the book of Devarim was created much later, when I say much later, they're already in the land. Much later when we get our Devarim. Even is proposed that the earliest that we can pin when the Chumash or the first 5 books or the first 5 are written down is about 925 to 950 BCE. We see in the text a different style and features that are distinct from another style and features by the usage of the name, some inconsistencies, and other features that we acknowledge. Remember, I went to school for forensic psychology. So naturally what I do when I look at data, I look for patterns and I try to create a behavioral profile in order to identify an entity and look at other entities that are related to that same profile so I can make connections, right? And then from those connections, you can make predictions, right? So, so the point I'm trying to make here is that once we understand that Devarim was written much later, at a point in time when the priesthood is trying to centralize power in the South. Now remember, I'm talking about Devarim. I didn't even get into the rest of the narrative that we go into when it deals with David, Solomon, and all the rest of them. I'm just speaking specifically of the second iteration of the mitzvot is in a place where the priests are trying to centralize power and to associate that power with the king in the South, thereby prescribing that all the people are to come to Jerusalem in the South in order to keep Passover. Now, when we look at Jeroboam, we see something very interesting where he decides we're not going to go to the south, not because we purposely want to blatantly disregard the statute that was given by Yah. Because remember, the only reason why Jeroboam was in power in the first place, not because he sought power, he asked for it. A prophecy came to him and told him that he will be in charge of the northern tribes, and the people put him in power. So he had to make political and social decisions, given that Rehoboam was doing something that was disfavorable amongst the people. So he had to improvise. And that's when he did what he did. So when we see a situation where the kingdom is split, we have two political agendas going on. And now we have a situation where now the Assyrians are coming and they're taking away the northern tribes, and they're trying to attack Jerusalem, but they couldn't take Jerusalem because it was too heavily fortified, too much manpower there. They was able to take Lachish, which is not far from Jerusalem. They couldn't take Jerusalem, but being that they buffered Israel from expanding any further, they made Israel a vassal state, and Israel then was buffered by the Assyrians. And then later on, we see the Egyptians come in, we see the Babylonians come in. But the point I'm trying to make is that if the kingdom is split, if the northern tribes has been taken away, now we have a situation where reforms are being done, because the date that we have for when Devarim is constructed academically is 622 BCE, anywhere from 622 to right before the Babylonians came and took over. So we have two dates for the Babylonians, 597 and 587 BCE. We have two sieges. All right. The first siege happened. They took people away. Ezekiel being one of those people taken away in the first siege. And then the last siege happened 10 years later in 587 BC, where the majority of them was taken out the land. Now look at this. If the priests in 622 are trying to centralize power and reforms are being done in the south, my brother mentioned Hezekiah. Hezekiah commenced reforms in the land. The brother brought up 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14, if I'm not mistaken, when he says, and my people would hear, they got to hear from Yah, and it says, turn from their wicked ways. Turn. That's the thing. So that's why when anytime we see that the statute, laws, and commandments is reinstituted, or people are keeping it, there had to be some kind of cleansing being done in the land. Watch this. If the cleansing is being done in the land, and the cleansing that's being done by these reformists in the south, the kings, and the kings are now trying to centralize power to try and preserve whatever kingdom is left, or whatever state establishment is left of the children of Israel. Now when the priests get involved, and now they're finding a book, remember they found the book, they had lost the book, they had found the book. Now it's like, okay, well, we got to do something about this. So now we have a situation where the priest is now prescribing that everybody has to come to Jerusalem in order to keep Pesach. And we see precisely that is what happens. Wait a second. Hezekiah, Josiah, watch this. Let's get the scriptures which shows that now even some northern tribes are instructed to come to the south and keep Pesach. They could not keep it in the north because they were trying to centralize power again. Family, when you understand politically what is going on, this will blow your mind. Most of us are not looking at it from an interdisciplinary position. Therefore, our perspective is just honed into a couple of proof texts that we utilize in order to establish I want to use my words carefully, a proposition as to why we say it must be done here in this locale, that's Jerusalem. But what people have to understand, before that concept was even materialized, there was nothing in the first 5 books that gave a name. Not even, watch this, not even in Deuteronomy, where we have the second iteration of the mitzvot. It just says, again, the place where he chooses to place his name. So if the priests are the ones that were responsible, watch this, responsible, because look, the first kings that we get, Saul, David, Shlomo, the first kings that we get are all from the south. 1 Benjamite, 2 Judites. These are all southern kings that are centralizing power in the south. Therefore, all the edicts are coming from the south to the north, to the point where Shlomo, according to the literature and the narrative, is becoming big-headed with his power. He is enacting forced labor on the people. So you want to talk about their journey or their sojourn in Kemet was bad. When they was under the auspices of the direction of Shlomo or Solomon. He was a taskmaster. He went and got Jeroboam and said, I want you to watch over these people. And we know that people loved Jeroboam because they requested for him to be king, because he had to have been a very merciful, a very respectful overseer of the people. Because my position is that when he was initiated by Solomon to watch over the building of the temple, he treated the people with fairness to a point where he was entreated by Yah to say via prophecy that you will rule the 10 kingdoms, the 10 tribes in the north, and you will be king over them. And when Solomon found out, he didn't want nobody to contend for his throne, because remember, in his early years, he had to fight and get control of the throne. He did not want competition. So therefore, he went after the neck of Jeroboam, and everybody knew about that, and then kicked Jeroboam out. And now his son comes on the scene after he passes, and his son inquires of the people, hey, look, what y'all want me to do? They said, listen, we just asking you, please be merciful with us, treat us with respect, and we'll do whatever you say. He went to the elders. The elders said, listen to the people. He went to his boys. He's like, yo, son, don't listen. They bugging out. You a king, son. Then he goes to people and said, look, you think my father was the man? I got more power on my pinky finger than he does in his loins. You think my father did A, B, and C forced labor? I'm going to do it 10 times fold on you. The people left because they said, listen, we cannot deal with this. And remember, all of this was part of them requesting to have a king over them. This was something that they had to endure because they requested a king over them. So now when we understand when the text itself was generated, who were the ones who centralized the power? Because right after the Deuteronomist features, we have the priestly features that are putting additional emphasis on the things that we're finding in the Deuteronomist features. And I'm just using this one theory to lay it out, but I posted on my page the 3 major points that caused us to tell that the text itself had various either schools of scribes or individual scribes who compiled and put the text together, because we see certain features that are there where they did not want to deal with internal inconsistencies. They didn't want to, they added what we call doublets in there, which didn't have to be there. But if you have somebody that is adding to the text that may not have a portion of the previous text, and then a compiler comes on later and puts it together, you start to see why you see these unique things that appear there in the Chumash. So the reason why I'm saying this to the family is because, and again, I don't know why it's not letting my brother in. I'm going to try to add him yet again, because I kept trying to add him. These things are important because when we see that the Samaritans, which are the ones that have their own Pentateuch, right, or their own Chumash, it's interesting because in theirs, Mount Gerizim is the place in which they keep their Passover. Now, are they wrong for doing that? Why would they be wrong? Simply because you're not given any specific prescriptions in the Torah, Chumash, first 5 books of Moshe, of specifically where to keep the Passover. Now, if you want to jump to Yeshurun or Joshua, Yahushua, or whatever the case may be, that's a extended discussion. I see you. I say something.
Okay.
I can hear you. Okay, I can hear you. This last part. If we want to go and see where he kept the Passover, because remember, in Bamidbar, Numbers chapter 9, they're keeping the Passover. They're not in the land yet, but they're keeping the Passover. And then we see it kept after that. And then we got the period of Judges all the way to Samuel, who's the last judge. And then we got the monarchy period that occurs because the people request for the monarchy. And again, this is all important when we do the research and look at all of the evidential data and try to explain what it is that we're looking at and why the people are coming to a particular prescription on how they commence to keep the Passover, right? So I'm gonna give it over to my brother, and then I'm gonna let him build some more, and then I'm gonna add another portion because now it looks like we probably won't do a full YouTube discussion. It's gonna get kind of late, so we can kind of finish it here and have a part 2 or a part 4 actually. This is 3 videos. A part 4, okay, we can finish going through the litany of data that's available for us to scrutinize and be able to determine, what is the proper prescription on where Passover is to be kept. So go ahead, Ak, I'm gonna let you build, and then I'm gonna add another point.
All right. I have missed a lot, man. I'm sorry, man. I'm having some technical difficulties. I got an Obama phone.
It's
This is
okay.
my Obama phone. I go live on my Obama phone. But
It's all good. Go ahead. But wherever you want to pick up, it's up to you.
Okay. Now you mentioned that throughout the course of our people traveling, they kept the Passover, and they kept the Passover in a couple of different places.
Mm-hmm.
But once Jerusalem was established, there was no other place that they went to keep the Passover. That was the place to go. But I want to go to Devarim chapter 8 right quick. No, excuse me, chapter 12.
Uh-huh.
And I do want to show that, even though Jerusalem, Moses didn't say, well, when you get to the land, go to Jerusalem. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that wasn't, and he told the children of Israel, though, this is what he told them. I'm going to go to Devarim chapter 12. And I'm going to start at verse 1. It says, these are the statutes, the judgments, which you shall observe to do in the land, which the Lord your God of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it,
Mm-hmm.
all the days that ye live upon the earth. Ye shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess serve their mighty ones, upon the high mountains, and upon the hills, and upon every green tree. And ye shall overthrow all their altars, and break their pillars, and burn their groves with fire. And ye shall hew down the graven images of their mighty ones, and destroy the name of their name out of that place. It says, ye shall not do so unto the Lord thy God, but unto the place which the Lord shall choose. That's the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the Most High is going to choose a specific place. And so throughout the course of Israel traveling, they was in limbo to where until David came through and he established Mount Zion, Jerusalem, as the place that we are supposed to go. So you'll see Israel keeping Pesach, outside of Jerusalem or in the wilderness.
Mm-hmm.
But when they got to the land, and once the commandment went forth for them to, once the commandment went forth, when David established Mount Zion as the place, that's where we were commanded to go. It's nowhere else.
Wait, can you give me that commandment for them to go to Mount Zion, Jerusalem, the commandment that they're supposed to go there and keep Passover? Do you have that?
Okay. All right. Well, what it says, where it says for them to, okay.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. I'm gonna go back to Second Chronicles chapter 2 too. So we're gonna go back to Second Chronicles chapter 6. But I'm gonna get Deuteronomy 16 and verse 16, and then I'm gonna get Second Chronicles chapter 2 and verse 6. Verse 5 and 6.
What was that again?
Devarim chapter 16.
5 and 6. Okay.
Yeah. And then I'm gonna get Second Chronicles chapter 6, verse 5 and 6. Because see, once of Jerusalem was established,
Mm-hmm.
that was the place. That was the place. And being that it's been revealed to us in these days, we are to consider. We are to consider. Not everybody can make it, but if we pray to the Most High,
Mm-hmm.
He'll definitely get you there. I try to help out, and I got other brothers that will definitely help out and try to help other brothers get up too. That's a blessing from the Most High.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's all the Most High's work.
I agree.
When a brother be like, yo man, all right, well, I'll send you 100, you know what I'm saying? And, then we can just collectively help brothers get up. That's a blessing from the Most High. So 16 verse 5,
Mm-hmm.
Devarim, it says, thou mayest not sacrifice Pesach within any of thy gates,
Mm-hmm.
which thou gives thee, but at the place which the Lord shall choose to put his name, thou shalt slaughter the Passover at evening, at the going down of the sun. Now, 2 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 5, it says, since the day that I have brought forth my people out of the land of Egypt, I have chosen no city of all the tribes of Israel to build an house in it, that my name might be there.
Mm-hmm.
But I have chosen, or any man to be ruler over my people. But I have chosen Jerusalem. Devarim 16:16, it says, 3 times in a year all males are to appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose.
Okay.
So we clearly see right here in 2 Chronicles chapter 6, verse 6, that he chose Jerusalem that his name might be there. So, and then when you look, Israel, they kept it, during the days of David. Then they went astray after, Solomon. Everybody was doing what was right.
Mm-hmm.
They found the Torah. Hezekiah found the Torah. Everybody was doing whatever they wanted to do in the land.
So you said Hezekiah found the Torah, right?
Yeah, they found the
All
Torah
right.
in the yeah. They
And
found the Torah, but see what?
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so
No,
he
you go
found the
ahead. Go ahead.
Torah, and we
Yep.
see that there is a reinstitution of Passover during his lifetime,
Reinstitution.
right?
Yeah, during his lifetime. Right. Yeah, right. But now the reason why is because all Israel now at that time they had gone astray.
Mm-hmm.
Our people was going astray. Nobody was coming down to the house as commanded. So that's why he said, let us consider. That's why when you read 2 Chronicles chapter 30, it says, don't be like your fathers, but consider the house of God. Come down and consider.
Mm-hmm.
He said, when you read 2 Chronicles, because our people just wasn't going to the place of where the Most High put his name. The northern kingdom was led astray.
Mm-hmm.
By Jeroboam. They was led astray. So you see Israel not going. They didn't keep Passover for a very long time in the land. But does that mean for us that we are to not? Does that mean
So
for
let
us?
me ask you a question. Did Jeroboam,
Yeah.
did he institute Passover in the north?
Yes.
Okay, so they were keeping Passover in the north.
Yeah, but not according to. But they were supposed to go to Jerusalem. He didn't allow them to go to Jerusalem.
Do you have
and then he made.
Do you have a verse that instructs them that they have to go to Jerusalem to keep the Passover? Like not in Torah no more, but just the rest of the books. Do you have anywhere that is an instruction for them to go to Jerusalem and keep Passover? Or did that develop as a custom over time because power is being centralized in the South?
Do I have a verse that they had to go keep Passover? Absolutely.
No, I mean in Jerusalem.
Oh, sorry. State that question one more time.
Yeah. So can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, is there a scripture that instructs them to keep Passover in Jerusalem? Or do we just have as part of the narrative where it says that Yah's name was in Jerusalem during the building of the temple, and then we take Devarim chapter 16 and marry that with that narrative and say, okay, this is where Passover is supposed to be instituted?
Yeah, well, you can see King Hezekiah. You see 2 Chronicles chapter 30 where he sent all letters telling them to come to keep the Passover to the Most High in Jerusalem.
Okay, so
you can see him.
So this is after the northern tribes has been sieged, correct, by the Assyrians?
Yes.
Okay, so the northern tribes have been sieged by the Assyrians, right? We have a situation where they don't even know what the Torah is. They find it. They just found the Torah. They just found a book and and they're looking at it. Oh, okay, I guess this is what we're supposed to be doing. And then at that time, we see a situation where the Passover now is being fully kept in, not only in Jerusalem, but a proclamation goes out to the northern tribes that are still in the land. So all of them didn't get taken away in captivity, and say to them, yo, we want you to come to the south and keep Passover. Because remember, previously, they were still keeping Passover. They may have been doing other things, but they were keeping Passover in the north because of a political reason. Because Rehoboam was a wicked king. He wasn't a righteous king. So they was trying to avoid his wickedness, because if he's a wicked king and he's around the temple, guess what? The temple's unclean. He wanted to go to war and fight all his brothers and shed blood. The Most High had to stop him and say, no, I don't want you to do that. So now look at the situation of the northern tribes. They don't want to be subjugated to captivity again. You know why? Because it says that in Torah. It says that you are to entreat each other a particular way. That's why we have the Jubilee, because you are to remember your affliction, your captivity in the land of Egypt. You are not to usurp God's authority, which is the Torah, and impose your will onto the people or your brothers, because that is going against Torah. So now in the north, they have a situation where the power is being centralized through Saul, Benjamite, David, a Judite, Solomon, a Judite, and then Rehoboam, all people from the south now, no kings from the north at this point, only the south. And my brother dropped off again, but I'll wait for him to come back on. Only kings from the south that are now trying to connect all the tribes, bring them all together. We hear the outcry mostly from the south that is requesting a king. It's mostly from the south. So politically, there's something going on where the law is being broken in the south, and therefore Jeroboam had to make a decision to say, wait, we can't send them to the south, because if we do, then we are allowing ourselves to break Torah, because Solomon had things on lock. Rehoboam, not so much so, because he's still young and he doesn't really get the respect like that. Now we have a situation where they're like, listen, we're going to go our own way, get Jeroboam, make him king. You know why? Because they remember Jeroboam, because he was one of the overseers in Solomon's project, and say, this guy's going to be king. He had to make a political decision, say, listen, these people in the south, they're going to hurt us. They're going to hurt us. They're going to put us into subjection to them. They're going to put us into captivity. They're going to put taskmasters over us. We cannot go to the south. Therefore, we're going to stay in the north. And look at this. Watch this. Because they are reading the Chumash or the Torah, there's no prescription that says that they have to go to the south in Jerusalem to keep the Passover. It's not there. So are they breaking, watch this, are they breaking Torah for not going to the south to keep Passover? They said, no, we're going to keep it here in the north. We're going to do it a month later. The reason why is because if we try to do it in the first month, there's going to be some conflict and people may be tempted to go to a south. And we make it a custom based on Torah to keep the Passover in the second month. Now we can kind of govern that, and it can become our custom, and we will continue to keep the law. They didn't break the law. They kept, as far as the Passover is concerned, because there's no prescription that says that they have to go to Jerusalem. That decision was made by the centralized power in the south. That's why. And Josiah knew this, Hezekiah knew this, hence why they had to go and get their peoples and say, you need to come to the south and keep this Passover, because now you guys don't have no power in the north anymore. You got to come to the south. See, people are not looking at this type of evidence. So when people say the Most High chose, we don't have Jerusalem in the Chumash. If you cannot find Jerusalem, then you cannot say that somebody who's keeping watch. Remember, Jeroboam became a king because the Most High sent a prophet to give him a prophecy saying that you will be the king of the northern tribes. So just like the southern tribes, where we have David and Solomon, who are now, we have a situation where the temple was constructed in Jerusalem. They're keeping it there because their revelation is that, okay, look at this. Let's say this is true. Let's say at that time when the king was reigning, Solomon, the revelation came that this is where I'm placing my name, so you guys have to do Passover in Jerusalem. It doesn't say that like that in the text. It just says he places his name there in Jerusalem. So people are going to say, okay, because he placed his name there in Jerusalem, then we can go there and have Passover. But watch this. When we go to Yeshurun or Yahushua or Joshua, however you want to say it, chapter 8, and we go to verse 30. It says, then Joshua built an altar to Yah, the Elohim of Israel, in Mount Ebal, just as Moshe, the servant of Yah, had commanded the sons of Israel, as it is written in the book of the law of Moses, an altar of uncut stones, which you can do today. If you want to make an altar of uncut stones, you can. It's not against Torah to create an uncut stone altar. You can do that. People say, oh man, what you talking? Yes, there's no prohibition against doing that. Anyway, and it says, watch this, which no man had wielded an iron tool, and they offered burnt offerings on it to Yah and sacrificed peace offerings. He wrote there on the stones a copy of the mitzvah, the law of Moshe, which he had written in the presence of all the sons of Israel, and all Israel with their elders, their officers, their judges were standing on both sides of the ark before the Levitical priests who carried the ark of the covenant of Yah, the stranger as well as the native. Half of them stood in front of Mount Gerizim, and the other half in front of Mount Ebal, just as Moshe, the servant of Yah, had given command at first to bless the people of Israel. Then afterwards he read all the words of the law, the blessing and the curse, according to all that is written in the book of the law. There was not a word of all that Moses had commanded which Joshua did not read before all the assembly of Israel, with the women and the little ones and the strangers who were living amongst them. Now, let me slow down for 1 second. At this time, they just conquered Ai. Let's look on a map to see where Ai is at. Let's see where Ai is at. Let's see where Ai is at. Let me bring up a map. I want y'all to see where Ai is at so we can understand what's going on here. Let me get a good map so you can see where Ai is at. Let me get a good... So Ai, if I can get a good map with Ai in here, I don't have a good map. Hold on, let me do this. Will this give me Ai? All right, this is I can use this map. All right, let me show y'all something. I wish I was doing this on YouTube, because therefore I'd have a much better way of showing y'all. But let me show you guys this. This is important, right? Hold on. Let me see if you can come back in now. See if you can jump back in. That. If we look on this map here, hold on out.
Okay.
I don't know. All right. If you look on this map here, right? It says, whoops, the conquest of the promised land. If you look on this map, you'll see that Ai is right here where my mouse is at, right? You see Ai is right here. You see Jericho is right here. And you see Jerusalem where? Right here. Jerusalem is right here. So it's really interesting that we see it here. But when we go up, we see Mount Gerizim here. We see Mount Ebal. So look at this. Over to the right, we have Shechem. To the north, we have Megiddo, etc., right? But look how important this is. When the name that we see, the stuff that we see, after they conquered Ai, now they happen to be up here in the north, which is really interesting. Because then when we go to look to see where Jeroboam decides that he wants to set up shop and do everything, things start to make sense. So we see here, Ai is here, and then Mount Gerizim is here, Mount Ebal is here, and this is where what we see is the name, where Joshua, he goes and he puts the name of Yah, he puts that right there in a stone pillar. He stands there and reads the blessings and everything there, and it's right there in the north. It's not in Jerusalem where that's happening. It's not in Jerusalem. So now we have a situation where at this point you could technically keep Passover by Mount Gerizim or Mount Ebal, specifically because this name was placed there and Joshua was doing what he was commanded, because the scripture says he followed everything that Moses instructed for him to do. So
yeah,
now
that was after though. That was before when they was doing that. That was before the Most High, he chose Jerusalem. The house, once he chose Jerusalem, all that went away. I mean, all the tithes and all our offerings supposed to go to the only house of God, which is in Jerusalem. That's just how it was going. They was all bringing it. Once Mount Zion was established, that's where our people were supposed to
So
go.
listen, we're going. I hear what you're saying, but we're sticking with Passover for right now, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so in the commandment for Passover, you subscribe to Jubilees.
Yes, I use that book.
Okay.
I do. I don't. It's not Torah to me, but I do see it as a book that I derive a lot of good information from that helps to emphasize certain things as it pertains to the scriptures. So yes,
well, they found it in the Qumran. They founded the scrolls.
Oh yeah. I did a whole lecture on that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So they did find it at Qumran, because remember, here's the question. If we're looking at the Qumran community, where did they keep Passover? They didn't go to Jerusalem.
Well, they was at that time, I mean, they was being persecuted, man. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that happened.
You said they were being persecuted, therefore they had to keep Passover where? By the Qumran kings, right?
Okay, but how did they keep it? That's my thing. How did they keep it? Did they keep it
kept a little bit different?
Did they keep it as it was written? That's what I'm saying. Because really. you can only slaughter the Passover lamb before the house.
Yeah, and we see so according to what we're reading in the Chumash, but that was a community as well that had Zadokite priests that was there amongst them as well, and they created their own halakha given the circumstance, because they said that Jerusalem was what? Unclean. That's why they didn't indulge in going to Jerusalem to do anything, and why a lot of their halakha had to be principle-based or metaphysical, because they could not concretely do certain things, right? But technically, if they decided that we want to slaughter the Passover lamb here by the caves, and they can say we got revelation, because if you read some of their
you got to remember that's that Qumran, that's all Jerusalem. That whole area is Jerusalem. So once, that's what I'm saying, once you get there, you'll be able to see even that map you just pulled up where they got Jerusalem is at. Jerusalem, that's all wrong. That they got
people say it's in Tel Arad. They'll say Jerusalem is in Tel Arad. Some people will say that. Correct.
Yeah, I mean that's why I want you to come.
And that's what the brother teaches. Yehoshua, that's what he teaches, right?
Yeah, but he's been doing the research. He's the expert. Yeah, he's the expert. He's been doing it before me and you came out of the womb. You know what I mean? So he's got a lot of mileage on his. He got a lot of good information. How
you know I'm not the same age as him? I'm just messing with you. I'm just messing with you.
But the good thing is, Ron, is that like we have the desire to do what's right by the Most High. We all do. But once we start looking at the commandments and inside of the land, when we put ourselves in the land, we have to do a lot of our forefathers. They didn't do what was right. They was just they just didn't do it.
Some of them did do what was right.
Yeah,
because the Most High said he's going to spare a remedy.
And this is what I'm trying to tell you. Do what's right and come to Mount Zion.
No. You know I'm not opposed to that. I'm with it. I'm with it 100%.
Let me ask you this. Mr. Shields. Mr. Shields. First, I just want to say that you're a good scholar amongst the people. I appreciate you, and I just want to ask you, how do you keep the Passover?
Oh man, that's an excellent question. So I kept it one way before I started to work with and assist with the congregation that I currently go to. You know what I'm saying? So KHM, there's an outline of certain practices that we do, and I'm still building to it now that I'm analyzing halakha and how we should do certain things that are not explicit in the text, but it's implicit. So prior, what I would do is I would go to a farm, and that farm would have what they say kosher lamb, and it would be a lamb that has no spot, no blemish. So it would be inspected, no bones would be broken, and then we would get the actual meat for Passover there, and then we would, in the evening time, we would make the Passover meat from the lamb, along with the bitter herbs and along with the unleavened bread. So that's what I was doing prior. I was actually going and getting the meat from a kosher farm, and I would use that meat to eat the Passover, right? So they would slay it. Now, again, this farm, via halakha that they practice, they slaughtered the lamb a particular way, because remember, the text doesn't tell us how to kill the lamb. It doesn't tell us how to do it. So they killed the lamb a particular way so that the death was painless. You don't have all of this extra adrenaline in the system, etc. And then after they slayed the lamb, they would follow, and mind you, they would follow all the prescriptions that's there in Torah as far as the lamb is concerned. Now, that changed when I joined my congregation, and now we do things a little bit differently because I'm no longer going to that farm to get the kosher meat or the kosher lamb. Right? We get kosher lamb, but unfortunately, the kosher lamb that we get is butchered up, right? So it's not a whole lamb that we get and we eat from it, but it's butchered up, right? But going forward, what I would like to do is get the lamb from our own farms. We got a lot of farms, Hebrew farms. Get a lamb from our own community farms while we're here. It's not to say that we wouldn't go and make a pilgrimage to Israel and even attempt Passover there, but the times that we're here and it's inconvenient to go and do the Passover in the land, what we would like to do is we would like to patronize our own community and get lambs from farms that are owned and operated by our people. And then from there, we can carry out things the way we best can as prescribed. Now, this is what I was saying when it comes to where Yah chooses to place his name. We don't have where that designation is specifically in the Chumash or Torah. We see that later develop in the rest of the books after the monarchy is established. And remember, the monarchy was not something that Yah wanted, number one. And number two, Solomon, the person responsible for building the temple, put people into slavery and forced them into slave labor in order to build the temple. So we have a situation where even the hands that were building the temple was not even according to scripture because they were under Solomon's captive reign and coercion in order to build the temple. That right there goes against Torah.
Yeah, well, I mean, no, because I mean, according to the rules, according to the rules of war, Torah, if an individual, wants to make peace, we make them tributaries, and they would have to do work for us. So you look in even in the future, it talks about, strangers are going to build the walls of Jerusalem in the future. When you look in Isaiah, it talks about. So I mean, my thing for you, brother, is just for you to come up and get the information, and that way you can understand. You can get a better, more understanding on. Okay, now you don't have to. We're not obligated to slaughter here in this land. Mm-hmm. We're not obligated to slaughter nothing here. Because the commandment says we slaughter before the house. So this is the thing, like when you come to Jerusalem, these are the things that we find out. We're not obligated. We're not on a journey.
Commandment is that? Can you give us a reference to that commandment?
What, there's slaughter before the house?
Yeah.
Yes. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 5.
Mm-hmm. So we have it as a reference point. I think you read it already.
Yeah, but you got to sometimes, one thing about the Torah is, Moses got to tell the children over and over. It's just like your sons and your daughters. You got to sit down, stop, sit, stop. It's the same thing the Most High had to tell us this Torah over and over and over. So we got to hear it over and over again. But he tells us in Deuteronomy 16 and 16:5, he tells us, he says, we may not slaughter Passover within any of thy gates, but at the place where the Most High shall choose. You see what I'm saying? At the going down of the sun. Now I'm just want to read this right quick. Sure. Go ahead, Doc. I'm sorry.
No. I said go ahead.
Okay. I just want to read. Jubilees chapter 49 a little bit. Sorry about that.
It's okay. Take your time.
Jubilees 49.
Mm-hmm.
Jubilees 49. I'm gonna read verse. I'm gonna start at verse 15 to verse 18. It says, and do thou command the children of Israel to observe the Passover throughout their days. This is Jubilees chapter 49, and I'm starting at verse 15. It says, and do thou command the children of Israel to observe the Passover throughout their days, every year, once a year, on the day of its fixed time. And it shall come for a memorial, well pleasing before the Most High, and no plague will come upon them to slay or to smite in that year in which they celebrate Pesach Passover in its season, every respect according to his command. It says they shall eat it, they shall not eat it outside of the sanctuary of the Most High, but before.
Where is this you're reading again?
This is Jubilees chapter 49.
Jubilees 49. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And it says, and they shall not eat it outside of the sanctuary, but before the sanctuary of the Most High. And all the people of the congregation of Israel shall celebrate it in its appointed season. And every man who has come upon it its day shall eat it in the sanctuary of the Most High before the Lord from 20 years old upward. For thus it is written and ordained that they should eat it in the sanctuary of the Most High. It says, and when the children of Israel come into the land, and the land they are to possess, into the land of Canaan, and set up the tabernacle of the Most High in their midst of the land in one of their tribes, until the sanctuary of the Most High has been built in its land, let them come and celebrate the Pesach in the midst of the tabernacle.
So the midst of the tabernacle, and where was that at?
In Jerusalem.
To Jubilees. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. And it says, and let them slay it before the Most High year to year. So we can only slay, the sanctuary was built in Jerusalem, in Mount Zion. So once that was established there, that's where all of our people went. Now, did they go there as commanded? No, but it was commanded for us to go there. If Israel was keeping Pesach or slaughtering the Passover lamb outside of that was according to their own will. You see what I'm saying? But the Most High, once the commandment went forth, we were supposed to slaughter the Pesach lamb and before the house of the Most High. So these are some of the things that we learn when we in the land, because the scriptures tell us to seek ye the ancient paths. And these are some of our ancient customs that we're learning, inside of Jerusalem. And it's an honor for me to be able to do it and to be able to share it with other brothers like you. So when brothers do come up, okay, this is when we start, because we learn. It's a learning process, bro. It's a learning process, and it's just continuously learning. I'm still learning more stuff. And I tell you, Elder Hoshua, he's a very good teacher. He don't release a lot of information because he's been backstabbed by a lot of these, a lot of brothers in the community, and then some of these Jewish people then stole some of his information. But he has a lot of good information, and he's a great source.
I follow him. I follow him on YouTube, and I watch his stuff. Yeah, and I watch his stuff. So let me ask you a quick question, since what I'm gonna do, since I'm not even gonna go on YouTube tonight, I'll just stay on here. What I want to do is just ask you a couple more questions to see if you're willing to address other pieces of information, right? So I mentioned to you about the Samaritans and how the Samaritans say that Mount Gerizim is where Yah placed his name, and that is where Passover is to be kept. So my question for you is, the Samaritans, who lay claim to be part of Israel, are they doing it wrong?
Okay, now was this before
According
or
to, according to the first 5 books of Moshe.
okay, now this is before. This is before the Jerusalem, correct?
Well, they'll say the tradition goes back before Jerusalem and persists throughout the scriptural chronology, because they still keep, to them, Mount Gerizim is where they do their Passover and everything else. They don't go to Jerusalem.
Okay, well, I know I mean, from going forth for the commandment when the Jerusalem was to be built, we can see that we all supposed to go there. Now, Mount Gerizim, from my understanding, that was before the house of God was before the Most High put His name in Mount Zion.
So let me ask
Now,
you a question. If the Most High placed His name in 3 different places, how do you know which one to go to? Are one, is one correct, the other 2 wrong, or all 3 correct? Because there's more than one place where His name was placed.
yeah, but now He placed His name. Well, okay, now did He place His name? Did He put His name anywhere else after He established it? After He established in Jerusalem? That's what I'm saying.
So that's
Once
what I'm saying. So
Jerusalem was set,
Jerusalem is the precedent that overrides everything else.
yes, sir.
And is there a commandment that tells us that Jerusalem overrides any other place the Most High put His name at in order for the Israelites to do Passover? Now, I'm not talking about going to the temple and doing offerings. I'm talking simply just the Passover and unleavened bread.
Right. Now, I mean, if you read Deuteronomy the 16th chapter,
Mhm.
it goes into it goes into everything. But then when when once our people got to the land, you see that the Most High put His name in Jerusalem. That's the place that we was commanded to go bring all of our tithes, all of our offerings, because that's the only house of God is in Mount Zion. So that's when we was commanded to go, to not Mount Gerizim or any other place. When the commandment went forth that Jerusalem was set, that's the place that Moses, when you read the Devarim chapter 8, he said, when you come into the land, there's going to be a place that the Most High shall choose to put His name there, and there you shall go and you bring all of all your tithes, all your offerings. So was that in Mount Gerizim? Or was that's in Jerusalem? I'm gonna say Jerusalem because we can read about, you can read about certain kings, being in Jerusalem, ruling in Jerusalem for years. You can look throughout all of Judah, all the kings, whether they was good or bad, they ruled in Jerusalem. A matter of fact,
No, go ahead.
yeah. No, I'm just saying. So for my understanding and for my study, that's just for my studies. That's the place. After we got to the land, of the 500 years after David came and he's established, he took the strongholds of Zion from the Jebusites.
Mm-hmm.
That was the exact place. That was the place for us to go. Nowhere else but to that place. And
Okay, that's because the temple was built there. The tabernacle was there, and then the temple was there. That's why you're saying we ought to go there because the temple and the
no.
tabernacle.
It's not. I'm not saying that. I'm not. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
me.
Just
It's not
asking.
me saying that. That's the scripture saying that we should,
Does the
that we
scripture
supposed.
command us to go to Jerusalem because there's a temple there to do Passover and unleavened bread? I'm not talking about no other sacrifices. I'm just saying Passover and unleavened bread.
Yeah, well, Passover. Passover was a feast day, and it was given to us. And once the Most High said, once we get into the land, once we got into the land, that He was gonna choose a place,
Mm-hmm.
and that's where we go to keep the Passover year to year.
So,
That's why
so
Hezekiah.
and that's why we had mentioned earlier Joshua. A place was chosen. Joshua followed all the commandments that we see in Deuteronomy chapter 27. And the name of Yah is placed there. The scriptures are read. Blessings and curses are given out. And then a commitment is made there as well. So Yah's name was actually placed there as well, which is
Yeah,
north
but
of
that wasn't.
Jerusalem.
That wasn't the place where we was commanded to go. You see, that
So
wasn't the
when
place.
Joshua went there, he wasn't commanded to go there.
I don't see. I just see.
That's
I
Joshua.
see. You said Deuteronomy 27.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they haven't come into the land at this time.
No, not at that time. But then, then go to Joshua
Right,
that I
right.
read.
So, but that's what I'm saying. So we gotta go with when they got to the land. That's what I'm
So they
talking
was
about.
in the land in Joshua. They was already in the land. They had They had conquered Ai already.
Right, but they didn't. But the tabernacle or the place, the Most High didn't choose the place at that time. He didn't choose a place. He didn't choose a place. He didn't choose Mount Zion until David, to the times of David. That's when he established and made the commandment. Okay, this is the place where I'm gonna put my name right here, and this is where you should bring all your tithes, all your offerings to this place, no other
Mm-hmm.
place, but to this place. So once that was established,
Mm-hmm.
everything else was dead.
Okay, so can I read something for you real quick? I'm gonna show you
Yes,
on the
sir.
screen as well so you can see. Is it okay
Okay.
if I can read something for you real quick?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are you familiar with a brother by the name of Emmanuel Tove?
I'm not.
Okay, so Emmanuel Tove, just so you have a background of Emmanuel Tove. Emmanuel Tove is one of the foremost scholars when it comes to textual criticism of the Tanakh, and more specifically the Torah. So if you want to understand the differences between the various manuscripts that we have, the styles, the orthography, the syntax, morphology that we see in the text, and just certain features that you typically won't be able to perceive if you're just reading the text alone, he has dedicated years and years of his life to looking at all the text and being able to parse things out so that way we can better understand what we're reading, right? It's an apparatus that is a tool that allows us to better read the text, right? So we can better understand it. And what I want to do is I just want to read something. And I brought up the Samaritan Pentateuch because that's one of the texts that he does textual comparison with the Masoretic text, which if you're reading the King James Bible, that's where the Old Testament comes from. And then we also have the LXX, the Septuagint. You also have other fragments like the Nash Papyrus, the Geniza Cairo manuscripts, etc. Right? So we have all these various manuscripts, and what he does is that he examines all the available data that we have in these manuscripts, and he looks for things that look like nuances, right? So I'll give you an example. The Masoretic text, in the form we have it now, was much different than the Proto-Masoretic text or the first forms of it when it was being laid out. The first forms of it did not have the nikudot or didn't have the diacritic marks on it, right? So the diacritic marks was placed much later, and we have that from the Masoretic family, the Masoretes, because they were trying to preserve the Tiberian vocalization, which was one of the phonology, I would say phonological styles that they wanted to preserve, readings that they wanted to preserve in the text. That's how we find these nikudot there. But the reason why I bring this up is because the Samaritan Pentateuch is also textually compared with the Masoretic text, and because we don't have any autographs of the Tanakh, we have to look at all available evidence or texts and be able to compare them to try and reconstruct what the original would have said. And that's the only unfortunate thing. It's not really unfortunate. It can also be fortunate as well, because you don't just have one hand writing it and then that one hand could be incorrect in capturing the data, but we have multiple witnesses to try and reconstruct it. So I want to read you something from his book that you can get for free. And if you want it, let me know. Right.
Okay.
I'm gonna show it to you real quick. The book is here. Let me pull up the page real quick. Hold on, give me a second. And it is right here. So the name of the book, let me show you on the screen. Let me do full screen. Okay. So the name of the book is this right here. It's called Emmanuel Tove, Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible, right? Okay. So I'm going to go all the way to page, and we see him talk about some of this in the Masoretic. So what he does in here is that he goes through all the textual witnesses, and the textual witnesses is the different text type families or the different families of manuscripts, right? Like the Masoretic text, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Samaritan Pentateuch, the Septuagint, etc., right? And the reason why I'm bringing this out is because I want to show you something that's distinct, and it's going to lead me to the next point that I want to make. But I just want to show it to you so you're aware of what's out there, and maybe it can add to your studies, right? So when we go here and we read, excuse me, I think I'm covering this up. If we go here and we read page 95 and we go to phonological changes and we go down, well, actually, I'm sorry, page 94, not 95, not phonological differences. We go to 94, B, Samaritan elements, and we have ideological changes, right? It says the main ideological change in the Samaritan Pentateuch concerns a central place of worship. In every verse in the Hebrew Bible in which Jerusalem is alluded to as the central place of worship, the Samaritans have inserted in its stead, sometimes by way of allusion, their own center, Mount Gerizim, one word in their orthography. This change is particularly evident in both versions of the Decalogue, in addition of the 10th commandment, referring to the sanctity of Mount Gerizim. The commandment is made up entirely of verses occurring elsewhere in the Torah. Deuteronomy 11:29a, Deuteronomy 27:2b, 3a, Deuteronomy 24a, etc., right? And it says the addition includes the reading of the Samaritan Pentateuch in Deuteronomy 27:4, Mount Gerizim instead of Mount Ebal, which you'll see Brother Yehuda is placing in the chat. It says in most other texts, as the name of the place where the Israelites are commanded to erect their altar after the crossing of the Jordan, which I read for you in the book of Yeshurun or Joshua. Another change based on the Samaritan ideology pertains to the frequent Deuteronomic correlation, the site which Yahweh will choose. This reference to an anonymous site in Palestine actually envisioned Jerusalem, but its name could not be mentioned in Deuteronomy. Look at this, since that city had not yet been conquered at the time of Moses' discourse. So this is one of the excuses why we don't see the name Jerusalem. One of the reasons why, right? This is what's proposed. It says, from the Samaritan perspective, however, Shechem had already been chosen at the time of the patriarchs, Genesis 12:6, Genesis 33:18 and 20, so that from their point of view, the future form will choose, and we got the perfect imperfect tenses in Hebrew, needed to be changed to a past form, Bahar has chosen, C.E.G. Deuteronomy 12:5 and 14. Possibly also the following reading in a Samaritan reflects the same ideological change. Exodus 20, 21, and 24. In every place where I will cause my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. Remember when Yeshurun set up that altar, right? And he gave blessings and curses to them. He followed everything that he gotten from Moshe. It also says here, this is what it says in the Masoretic text, right? This is M for Masoretic. But here for the Samaritan Pentateuch, it says, in the place where I have caused my name to be mentioned, I will come to you and bless you. Further possible ideological changes, Samaritan Pentateuch are mentioned by Margin, and that's page 80, 77, 67, 768. Now I'm going to stop there for a reason because I'm going to make a point. I'll let you, if you want to give a little bit of feedback, and then I want to jump to something else. And then if you want, we could wrap up shortly. But what I'm trying to show you there is that being that the Samaritan Pentateuch is another piece of a textual witness to the Chumash, or the first 5 books of Moshe, we see here that there is some grammatical changes. There are some supposed ideological changes because we don't know which one is more original. We see that the Dead Sea Scrolls actually agrees more with the Samaritan Pentateuch than it does with the Masoretic text, even though some Proto-Masoretic manuscripts are found amongst the Dead Sea Scrolls. Now, this is important. Remember, the Dead Sea Scrolls agree more with the Samaritan Pentateuch than it does the Masoretic text, which is interesting. And he goes into depth to show you where these agreements and disagreements are at. But if the Samaritans have a manuscript and they consider their Abisha scroll or Abisha Sefer or book or scroll, however you want to literally interpret it, or if you want to use a gloss, that is old. And if you go to experts, they say, well, the oldest that we really can date this, according to one form of the Samaritan Pentateuch that they have, is 122 BCE. And then the Abisha scroll is purported to go back even further. It goes back to Joshua. This is what is purported by the Samaritans, that it goes all the way back to Joshua, right? That in that manuscript, there is some differences when it comes to the name being placed somewhere, because now you says, I have caused, and in Hebrew, that's the Hefil stem, and then I will cause, right? So this is the imperfect tense, future tense, right? But the have caused is also the perfect tense. So here is really interesting to note, because now we have a situation where there is no uniformity in where Passover should be kept because the first 5 books is not explicit on where that location is at. And if you look at the Samaritans, they only have the Chumash. They don't deal with the rest of the Tanakh. So I say that to say, if they had it in their version, let's say that, for example, their version of the Chumash had the word or had the name Jerusalem in it, then it would be case closed. Like, look, there's another manuscript. It says Jerusalem, boom, case closed. They don't even have it there either. So therefore, they are given weight to Mount Gerizim as being the place and where their Passover could be kept, where the Most High name was placed. And they are allowed to have that justification because it's not explicit in the Chumash. So I want you to speak on this briefly if you're aware of it, or if you have scriptures or wherever else you want to use to back it up. But what I'm saying is I just wanted to show this to you because it's extremely interesting when we start to look at other textual witnesses to see how they read as it pertains to this particular ideological discussion that we're having as to where Yah's name is placed and if it is Jerusalem or if it's somewhere else, or if it's anywhere your dwelling is and anywhere the Most High comes and reveals himself to you, where you can keep it in captivity. I'm going to go to that point next. I want to give a piece of evidence about the Passover being done in captivity. So go ahead, Ak. I'm going to let you build, and then I'll move on to my next point.
All right, so that was good. I appreciate that. It's the Book of Jubilees in the first chapter.
And if you want this, let me know, because I'm the type of person where I'm very honest with the information I present. I want anybody to have a dialogue with to have all the sources that I have so they can make an informed discussion, informed decision on the data that's being presented to them, whether they're going to accept it or reject it. But at least this way, it doesn't seem like I have an ace up my sleeve and it's not available to you. I want you to have this information as well so you can examine it and come to your own conclusion as well, all right? So make sure you remind me or inbox me later so I can send you everything that I'm showing to you.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay, now I'm gonna go to Jubilees, the first chapter.
Okay.
Now, we know that Mount Zion is not mentioned in the Tanakh. It's not mentioned in the Tanakh. But see,
you mean the Chumash, the first 5 books?
Yeah, the Chumash. Yeah, the Chumash.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so it's not mentioned there. But once we look into other scholastic sources, we can see that the Most High does tell Moses about Mount Zion, about Jerusalem. He tells him
about it. Where is it at? What verse?
Okay,
what chapter?
Got him.
No, but go ahead.
Okay. See this. You missed some information, brother. You missed something.
I mean, go ahead, share it. I may not have considered it for this discussion, but definitely enlighten me. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Okay, so now we're gonna go to Jubilees, and I'm gonna start at verse 26 on down.
Jubilees 26. So this is in Jubilees, you're saying, right?
Jubilees, yeah, Jubilees chapter 1, verse. I'm gonna start at verse 26.
Okay.
All right, and then now this is down. Now I'm gonna start. Let me start at verse 1 so we know what we're doing. All right, so verse 1.
Okay, yeah, you could give it to the audience because I have Jubilees up right here, so I'm familiar with it. Go ahead, Al.
Okay, so Jubilees chapter 1. All right, now this is Moses. This is Moses when we was in the wilderness, and he went up on the mountain of the Most High.
Before you build, so from your perspective, Jubilee is equal with the first 5 books, correct? Is that what your position is?
Absolutely.
Okay. Just want to know what your position was, but go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So in verse 1, it says, and it came to pass in the first year of the exodus of the children of Israel out of Egypt, in the 3rd month, on the 16th day of the month, the Most High spake unto Moses, saying, come up to me on the mountain, and I will give you 2 tablets of stone of the law and of the commandment which I am writing, that they may teach them. And Moses went up to the mountain of the Most High, and the glory of the Most High abode on Mount Sinai, and the cloud overshadowed it 6 days, and 6 days. And he called to Moses on the 7th day out of the midst of the cloud and the appearance of the Most High, excuse me, and the appearance of the glory of the Most High was like a flaming fire on the top of a mountain, and Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights. And the Most High taught him the earlier and the later history of the divisions of all the days of the law and of the testimony. Now I'm gonna skip down. This is a good chapter. I recommend you read the whole chapter. I'm gonna skip down to verse 26.
Oh no, I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with it.
Okay, and it says, and do write down for thyself all these words which I declare unto thee on this mountain, the first and the last, which shall come to pass in all the divisions of the days in the law of the testimony, in the weeks and the jubilees, eternity, until I descend and dwell with them throughout eternity. And he said to the angel of presence, write for Moses, from the beginning of the creation till my sanctuary has been built among them for all eternity. And the Most High will appear in the eyes of all, and shall know that I am the God of Israel, the Father of all the children of Jacob, King on Mount Zion for all eternity. And Mount Zion and Jerusalem shall be holy. So this is what the Most High told the angel to show Moses on the mountain, and he names Jerusalem Mount Zion for word.
Okay, so that right there is in the book of Jubilees, right? Some people don't consider it canonical. Some people do consider it canonical. So you do consider it to be canonical, right? And there we see the word Mount Zion. Now, the interesting thing about that is we have no other textual variant. So a textual variant is if I have two manuscripts that are supposed to say the same thing, have some differences in regards to a phrase or a word or something like that, right? We don't have any textual variants in any manuscripts of the Chumash, not the book of Jubilees, of the Chumash, where we have any word like Mount Zion anywhere in it. And there's a reason for that. Now, by the time we get to Jubilees, which is found in the Qumran caves, and I have 4Q, if you want to look at it in cave 4, I can show you the actual Jubilee transcription so we can go through it as well. You'll see that book of Jubilees is the doctrine that was kept in Qumran is based off of information that is in Jubilees and information that's in the book of Enoch, right? So in both of these books, we see it has heavy influence on the Qumran community, because you see a lot of the things, especially their calendrical text, is modeled after what we see in Jubilees and what we see in Enoch, right? But the issue we have is this. The greatest witness attestation that we have of the book of Jubilees is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. You can go to a website called oxfordbibliographies.com. You can look up the book of Jubilees, and it'll pretty much give you a lot of the layout. So we have we have it in Latin. You have it also in Ethiopic, right? Because Ethiopic, we also have a version Ethiopic. But all of these things come much later, because aside from the book of Jubilees and Enoch, which was considered to be important to the Qumran community, they've never included it in their Chumash, nor did they include it in their Nevi'im and Ketubim or writings. It was an appendage, something that sat alongside, that somebody compiled as a commentary to give you more insight as to when you're reading the actual Chumash. This is similar, the book of Jubilees is similar almost to, let's say, any kind of appendium, right? So we see any kind of commentary from any rabbi or sage where they're talking about a narrative that happens in the text. And you see this also by looking at the Josephus's work, right? The Antiquities of the Jews. If you read Josephus' work, Antiquities of the Jews, when he is talking about, the Chumash, or the first 5 books, he treats it similar to things that we are reading in the book of Jubilees, which means that this is an appendium or an appendage that sits alongside to give that community more insight into what is being laid out in the standardized canonical text, right? So if we was to introduce Jubilee as a witness that Zion is supposed to be the place where the Most High name is supposed to be. Let's say we was to introduce that, right? Then we also should introduce the Samaritan Pentateuch, where they say in the grammar that the name that he has caused to be placed was in Mount Gerizim instead of Ebal, Mount Gerizim, and we see Mount Ebal in the regular Chumash. Then we have to consider that that is also a possibility, because that's also referring to Moshe and his revelation by the Most High. Now we have on the table Zion. Now we have an unknown variable that's there in the Chumash where it doesn't say Zion or Jerusalem. And then now we have in the Samaritan Pentateuch where Gerizim is specifically stands out as being the place where he placed his name, because it goes in, it works in concordance with what we read in Deuteronomy chapter 27, where Moses is saying, once you cross the Jordan, you're to go to Mount Ebal and you are to set this up. And we see in Joshua, he has Mount Gerizim and he has Ebal there. And now we have these as also testimonies that the name was placed in those areas, as we have in Jubilee where it's placed in Zion. So now we just introduce all of these pieces of the puzzle on the table, right? So here's another piece of evidence, because I like that Jubilee. Just keep Jubilee on the table, right? Now we have to consider the lack of uniformity in the understanding of the mind of the Israelites as to how the Passover should be kept. Because if the Passover is understood to be done only in Zion or only in Jerusalem, this would have been something that is universal knowledge amongst all Israelites, because all of their forefathers had covenanted with the Most High via Moshe. Then they had they also agreed and covenanted with Joshua. And then in the land, then they had Saul, they had David, they had Shlomo, Solomon. And then from there, all the way up until they had the split kingdom, etc. Josiah's reforms, Hezekiah's reforms, Josiah's reforms. So it would be embedded in the social memory of the people that, okay, if we're going to do Passover, it can only be done in Jerusalem. So now I had shared with you another piece of evidence that I gave to you, which is from the Elephantine Papyri. It's called the Passover Letter. And that is an Aramaic text that was written by a group that was stationed on Elephantine Island. Elephantine Island had a lot of mercenary clans that were being used by the Persians and the Egyptians to fight certain battles or to commence hits or whatever on people, right? The group that's located there, from other evidence like P. Amherst 63 and others, is believed to have been a northern tribe community. So now we have now mind you, you see the reform that Hezekiah did, you see the reform that Josiah did, where they reached out to the northern tribes and say, yo, you guys need to keep Passover here in Jerusalem in the south with us, right? So we have a situation where this community, and I'm going to show you on my screen, this community is there in Elephantine Island, and they are now saying, okay, we want to make sure that we have, watch this, the Passover correct. We want to make sure that we are using these instructions to the absolute T to ensure that we're doing the right thing. Now, when we read this letter, we don't see, matter of fact, let's read it. We'll read it. I'm going to bring it up because I want to bring it up because I want to hand it over to you for you to address it if you would like. And it presents a very interesting piece of evidence that we should consider, right? So we go here. Let me swap my screen around real quick. So we go here to the Adoniyah archive, all right? The date is around what? 418 BCE, right? It gives you the actual, it gives you the actual size and lines of the text, the place, the parties, Hananiah, son of PN, to Jedaniah, and the Jewish troop. Object, Passover regulations, right? Here it gives you the background of the letter, which is extremely interesting, right? But we're going to read the letter itself. Here where it says the recto, it says, to my brothers, Jedaniah and his colleagues, the Jewish troop, your brother Hananiah, the welfare of my brothers, may the gods seek after all times. Now here, the way that is presented is we have the plural form for Elohim, right? Which we also have in the regular Masoretic text that we use, but you have singular verbs that's married up with a plural noun, which in Hebrew grammar, unless you're looking at something that's called a collective noun, that breaks the grammar of Hebrew, but a lot of Jewish scribes say it's a majestic plural. But here we'll see this is very interesting because it says the form is plural, and it says, and it is not clear here and in other letters by Jews whether it was understood as a majestic singular whether a pagan formula was used unthinkingly or whether a pagan scribe actually wrote the letter. They're saying this because they're like, well, if the Israelites are monotheistic, then if they're using the plural form of Elohim, right? And in this case, we have the aleph suffix because it's Aramaic, and it's saying, well, if this is being used in the plural sense, it's very distinct because they're assuming that these Israelites were monotheistic. I propose that they're henotheistic. This comes into place because we see there's not a great deal of uniformity as it pertains to certain understandings, whether it's theological, whether it's political, etc. He goes on to say, and now this year, year 5 of Darius the king, from the king, it has been sent to Arsamis. Now you thus count 14 days of Nisan, and on the 14th at twilight, the Passover observed, and from day 15 unto day 20 of Nisan, the festival unleavened bread observed, 7 days unleavened bread eat. Now be pure and take heed, work do not do on the 15th and on the 21st of Nisan. Any fermented drink do not drink, and anything of leaven do not eat, and do not let it be seen in your houses from the day 14 of Nisan until sunset on the 21st day. And any leaven which you have in your houses, bring into your chambers and seal them up during these days. To sealing my brothers, Jedaniah's colleagues, the Jewish troop, your brother Adoniyah, son of Pian. So now in here, we don't see any request for instructions of, hey, are we supposed to go to Jerusalem to do this? Are we? And the reason why you don't see a request to go to Jerusalem to do it, because that was not embedded in the social memory of the people. That was not religious dogma until much later. Mind you, this is during Persian captivity, where these people that's on Elephant Island are hearing that the southern tribes are coming back into the land to set up the temple and everything. This is why they're sending them letters. Because hey, they just set up a temple and everything in Jerusalem, and they set up walls and they rebuilt the city. So hey, let's ask them, are we doing these regulations properly? They didn't say nothing about, hey, okay, we got to go to Jerusalem, and that's where we got to do our Passover. You don't see anything like that here. And the reason why this is extremely important, because it shows us that this was not a universal understanding that they had to go to Jerusalem. They had a temple right there on Elephantine Island. You can look it up. They had a neighboring temple to Khnum, the Egyptians had, and the Egyptians actually sacked and sieged their temple to Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh, right? So I just want to share this because I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but if you aren't, at least I got to read it for you. I would just like your feedback on it to let me know if this is something that should be considered or we should just disregard it altogether.
No, I wouldn't disregard it. I would, I would look at it, but I mean, from my, just from my research, man. I mean, our people, they rejected Israel. They rejected Mount Zion. Still today. I mean, we reject Mount Zion. Brothers find any excuse in the world not to come. But I mean,
but just so you know, I'm not one of those brothers.
I know
right?
you're not. I'm not.
Okay,
I know you're not. I know you're not. I mean,
I just want them to be clear too, so they understand that I agree with that portion. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. But Mr. Shields, the commandment, like you was saying how you was, when you keep the Passover, you was doing it to the best of your ability. You go into the land, but you're not supposed to do that, Ron. You're supposed to kill the lamb before the house of the Most High. You're not supposed to do that. So you're not obligated to do that. Once you come over, you're not obligated to, because the Most High is making a way for us to go home now. So we have to consider home now.
So let me ask you a question. Where's the house that you slay the lamb at in the land?
It's in Tel Arad.
So you go to Tel Arad where there's no temple, right? You go to Tel Arad and you slay the lamb at that place because according to your understanding,
we slay it before the place. Now we in Jerusalem, yeah. Go ahead, but we slaying it before the house of God, because you only can slay the lamb before the house of God. You know what I'm saying?
But there's no house of God there where you guys are going, correct?
No, there's remaindings of the house of God there. There's remaining.
The remainings. Okay, so that suffice, right? That's sufficient.
That's sufficient because you have to be in the land to be able to rehearse your righteous acts.
So
Yeah.
so when you guys go there, are there any goyim there?
Or when we keep in the Passover.
Yeah, when you go there, just in general, are there any goyim there?
Yeah, there's goyim there. Yeah.
So are those goyim, are they all clean?
I don't know if they clean. I don't go there for them.
No, I understand that, but I'm asking, are they clean? Because if they are there and they're not clean, then they've defiled that area, correct?
Okay.
No, I'm asking, would the area be defiled if they're unclean?
Well, the land lays waste. The land lays waste. But the commandment says that for us, the commandment says for us to keep the Passover in the place where the Most High chose. You know.
But the land has to also be clean, right? Because when we see Hezekiah and Josiah enact their reforms, they have to cleanse the land, and this is why we see them only doing it in the second month. Go ahead.
It was the people. It was the people and the priests. It wasn't the land. It was the people and the priests. So
was the land defiled when they were sacrificing to other deities? They had their asherim erected. The lamb was defiled, right? This is why he had to cut down.
Every Passover, the lamb was defiled. I'm just saying.
Well, Jerusalem. Well, the king had power and control over Jerusalem, so he can give an edict to say, okay, look, we're gonna anything that makes this place unclean, we're going to clean it up. And being that, and in time of Hezekiah, I think this is the one that you showed, they had to do it in the second month because they used the first month to clean everything up. So the second month, when everything was cleaned, and remember, when you mentioned 2 Chronicles chapter 7, verse 14, where it's when the Most High is saying, if my people would humble themselves and they would seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, which means that if a person is breaking Torah, they are defiling that area. So it's going to be difficult for Yah to hear and for him to be sought and for him to be honored in a place that is unclean. So we're still just rehearsing, going to Tel Arad, and it's still rehearsal because we don't have sovereignty over the land. The land is still being trodden down and it's unclean. So therefore, if we say that is where we need to do it, we are still not even following all of the command. So that means a person would.
No. We're not following all the command, but we at the right time at the right place. We're slaughtering our lamb before the house. Of course, the land is defiled.
Is a ritual done by y'all? I'm just getting for understanding because I don't know how you guys do it exactly. Right. I've never seen y'all do it there, but is a ritual performed to purify?
Let me tell you how we do it. Let me tell you how we do it. You can read Exodus 12, and we get the lamb on the 10th day.
Mm-hmm.
We keep it until the 14th day.
Mm-hmm.
And on the 14th at even, we slaughter it right across the street before the house.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we do.
So you slaughter right before the street, and that evening of the unleavened bread, when you eat the Passover lamb, do you guys roast it out there, right? I think I've seen a video of you guys do it. Roast it out there.
We roast it out there, and we eat it with our loins girded.
With your staff in hand. Okay, so you do all of that. But do you guys do any kind of purification ceremony of yourselves or of that area in which you do it if it is made unclean by goyim that come in and out that area?
I don't know what you mean.
So are you familiar with the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Qumran community?
Yes.
Okay, so if you go to the baptismal formula, we see baptismal forms or mikvahs that they actually perform, purifications that they do before they commence any kind of rite, any kind of sacrifice. Most of the sacrifices was mostly spiritual anyway. But before they did anything, they had this idea that because the land is unclean, they will purify the area in which they perform their rite, and they will purify themselves. So that way they're not unclean, the area is no longer unclean, and then they can commence to perform that right, whatever it is that they do, and there's several things that they did amongst that community that's unique, the Echad community that's unique that we don't see elsewhere. So that's why I was just asking you if you guys do something similar because the area is defiled. Because if it's defiled, and technically, you guys would still be in a situation of anybody outside the land. You would just be a step closer.
No. We wouldn't be in the same situation as anybody outside of the land. I'm trying to throw that in there. No.
I'm talking about as far as like the goyim making things unclean. You understand what I'm saying?
You got to understand this, Mr. Shields, that
Yeah,
before the Mashiach come back, the tabernacle, when you read Daniel chapter 9, it goes into the Jerusalem being built in troublous time, unclean times. Jerusalem is going to be built back up. This is the wilderness of Revelations, the 12th chapter and the 6th verse. You know, from my studies, you know, it talks about the wilderness, people fleeing to the wilderness. So Jerusalem is going to be defiled all the way up until Christ come back. Even when the priests are reestablished back there before Christ come back, we still gonna be defiled, bro. So this is why the daily slaughterings are gonna be reinstituted. All these things are gonna be reinstituted before Christ come back. Then it's gonna be taken away because the Gentiles are gonna come in. You know, they're gonna come in again. The Antichrist and stuff. So the land is gonna be defiled, but the commandment for us is to be in the land. You see what I'm saying? So that's what we're trying to do our best. Now,
gotcha.
You know,
and I respect that. I have no argument.
And you know, I'm not condemning nobody.
Oh, no, I know you get down. Yeah. You're just encouraging us. You're just encouraging us to be as precise as we can be as it pertains to what Most High prescribed for us to do, right? And I wholeheartedly respect that. Like I said, I have no problem going with you there, and even 1 year doing it with you guys. I have no problem with that. The only thing that I'm trying to ascertain or trying to comprehend is if that is the proper place in which to do that. Because if it is not,
that's a good question. That's why you need to come up. You need to get with the expert. You get with Hoshua, and you just go around and you got to get all the information is there. That's why when you come up, all your questions that you got, you ask the elder, and he gonna come out with a whole bunch of stuff. You have to spend some time there to get the information. So it's a lot of information to get, and it's overwhelming, man. And it's.
I mean, you've been doing a pretty good job, man.
I've been trying to do my best to lead by example, but I want other brothers to come out. I want Zabak and the brothers from the HOI to come up, the brothers from the GOCC to come up.
You know, some of them have been out there with Hoshua.
Yeah. I was up there with my big brother Mathathua and some of the other brothers. Yeah.
So let me show you. That's this right here, because he sent me the video.
Yeah, that one. Yep. That's a good one. That was on the new moon on the Passover last year.
Was you there during that time?
No, I wasn't. I wasn't there. I didn't come until later on.
Oh, okay.
I was there. I was on my way there, but I didn't get there until later. And they was
later on in the day, right?
Yeah. But Doctor was on his way back up there. I just talked to him about the other day. He's ready to go back up. But so this is a learning curve that when brothers come up there.
Where are you located at in the States?
I'm in New York. I'm in upstate New York in Schenectady by Albany.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, you in Atlanta, Georgia, right?
Yeah, but I'm from New York City. I'm from the Bronx.
From New York City. Yeah, you're from the Bronx, from the boogie down, hold it down.
For real. So yo, what I want to do is I want us to give our final statements. Okay. I love this build, right? And this is how we should continue to edify one another, because I learned some stuff from you. Hopefully I was able to share some stuff for you to consider as well. If you want to have a follow-up discussion, if you have any other additional points that you want to bring out, we can definitely discuss that another time. So I'll let you go first and give your closing statement. I'll give my closing statement, and then I'm gonna give you some time back so you can enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, I just encourage brothers and sisters to turn back to Mount Zion, seek the Most High's face in Jerusalem. The Mount Zion has been revealed. It's in the place they call Telerad, Israel. Elder Hoshua is the expert there. You can come up and get all the information there. I ask the brothers when they do come, just come humbly and just come with a spirit to learn. And it's amazing, and what's going on. So I just want to say peace and blessings and Shabbat Shalom to all the brothers and sisters. And thanks for having me on too, Ron. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. And you're welcome anytime. You know, I told brothers, as long as they know how to conduct themselves, I have no problem having a dialogue. I'm not above anybody. I'm a student before I'm a teacher, and I love to learn. And I can, like I said, even in disagreement, I still learn something, right?
Absolutely,
So,
absolutely. But I would say that's what I noticed. I noticed about you. I noticed that you one of them brothers that, even though you know a lot, you still leave yourself open to learn and stuff like that. And this is what we need, because this is how we grow, and we can dialect, because it's a skill set. We come into the truth, and we forget. You know what I'm saying? Some brothers want to be more righteous than others, but we forget, man. We all brothers, man, and we at the end of the day, we regular old dudes from the hood, trying to do right by the Most High. But to get along with your brothers is a skill set I've been learning over the course of the years. It's a skill set to be able to get along with brothers, So I do my best to be able, even in disagreement, I could be like, okay, but Facebook has a way to, if a brother say something, brothers can take it the wrong way, and then it just be a whole bunch of miscommunication through Facebook. So it's better just to have these live videos and talk, so that way we can really get to build, opposed to through Messenger, because or through texting, because we could take something wrong, and then it'd be a whole bunch of mess, and then it just be old small dumbass stuff,
Exactly.
So that's
It's
why I
funny
like
that you say that, because I have tough skin, so I'm not easily offended, right? And when you was like, there's leaders leading Israel astray and A, B, and C, and then you heard that to be to me, I thought it was I wasn't offended. I just chuckled at it, because I'm like, man, this is my brother right here. I said, he knows I'm not purposely trying to dissuade nobody, or
it wasn't for you. It wasn't for you. I do that around these times, because to try to get brothers.
I know how you get that. That's why I said I ain't taking it personal.
Yeah. So
I like that spirit, though. You know what I'm saying? But so what I'll say is, the brother Yehuda is still on here, right? Maybe you guys can have a discussion one day. But he's saying, I'm gonna ask you this question real quick, and then I want to do my closing and let you go, because I don't want to hold you up. But he's saying that there's an Asherah pole there in Telerad, near where you guys go to do your Pesach at. Is that true?
The Asherah pole?
Yeah.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about the Asherah pole. I didn't get that. The Asherah pole. I don't know where that's at, Yahuda. I don't know where the Asherah pole is.
So he's saying it's right next to where you guys go.
Okay,
so I'm not sure.
Well, I probably missed it. I probably missed it. I probably missed the Asherah pole. I probably missed that.
Yeah, so Yehuda, if you have details on that, post it on your page. If you got an image of it, post it on your page. Or if you want to speak on it, do like a live video, and we'll check it out to see, what you're talking about, because the objective is to be as informed as possible, so that we all can make the best righteous decision as we can. I believe that we each other's keeper in every way possible, right? I believe that we can't have dialogues if we don't come in it with like, I'm right and he's wrong type of attitude. This discussion, it was not about me being right and him wrong, or him being wrong, me right, or him being right and I'm wrong. It was simply for me to give my perspective, for him to give his perspective, and see where we can agree even in disagreement. And I think we've made progress. I think this also helps us set precedences in the community, because guess what? This discussion wasn't for me and him. This discussion was more so for those who are watching, right? And if we can conduct ourselves as men with integrity and discipline, then the things that we have to say can be properly conveyed, and then the people who are listening can grab something from it and or input something from it so we can grow as a community. It is possible. We can do this. So like I said, I mentioned the things that I agree on with the brother. I said, listen, I agree that we should make pilgrimages to the land. We should attempt Pesach in the land. We should be as close to the prescriptions as we can if possible. So I have no disagreements there. The only thing that I disagree with the brother is simply the place on where it's done. Not that we shouldn't go to the land or that we shouldn't even consider Telerad to be one of those locations outside, right in the outskirts of Jerusalem, but still consider Jerusalem to actually perform this task. It was simply through the evidence that we have available that we're making this decision on. Does the weight of it fall on a commandment being to go to Jerusalem, or if it simply was left open and as things developed, it got centralized to a location that was supposed to be where everybody was to go to keep Passover. Now, we're not talking about any other feast days. We're not talking about any other offerings or anything like that. We're specifically just speaking about Passover and unleavened bread, right? So there's more information on this that I would like to speak about, but I'm going to hold my peace and probably discuss it next time if the brother wants to join in and give his feedback, because I appreciate his feedback. And definitely I want people to take away from this all the things that we said, all the evidences we placed on the table for you guys to consider it, bring it into your studies, examine it. Like I said to the brother, I need him to just inbox me so I can send him these references, because I want to make sure my brother has everything that I have. If I don't have something, then I will hope that he gives it to me, because I would never want him to be at a disadvantage if he's coming against an enemy. That's like me and a brother. That's like me and him being in the army and we fighting an enemy, but then me and him have a disagreement amongst each other, right? And I know he's about to get dispatched to go fight. And I'm like, well, you know what? Because I'm mad at him, I ain't gonna give this to him. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna withhold this from him, and he gonna have to do him. And he go out there and get killed simply because I could have equipped him, but simply didn't do it because of a disagreement that I had with the brother. I want him to have all access that I have, all the tools that I have, all the references that I have, because I want him to be equally as prepared when he comes across people who may present this that may, and have a more nefarious intent to undermine what he's saying, how he's and where he stands. I want him to be able to respond back and say, oh, you know what? Yeah, I know about that. My brother Divine shared that with me. Oh, yeah, I know about that because my brother Joshua shared that with me. I want him to be fully equipped for anything that comes his way, because I do not want this brother to lose, because every time he wins, I win. Every time I win, he wins. And I just want to make sure that we understand that when we can remove our pride, remove this thing of, oh, I'm right, he's wrong, and then implement diplomacy and tact when we communicate with each other, because this is my brother. So regardless of what we say here, at the end of the day, I still got love for him. If he needs something, I'm here. That's how it's going down at the end of the day. This brother said, yo, Divine, if you want to come to the land, bruh, I'll front you $100. He gave the link for where to get the cheap tickets. This brother went out his way to do that. He didn't have to do that. He didn't. How is he? Who obligates him to do that? He understands Torah. And because he follows it to the best of his abilities, it shows in his character. Yes, sir. So I thank that brother for his heart. I thank him for reaching out. I thank him for his generosity. And I pray that we can continue to have more builds, because as long as we continue to talk and dialogue like this with respect, we will get much further together than apart. So with that, I thank you again for coming on to my live. I look forward anytime, Mark. I look forward to having future builds with you. I'm going to let you go so you can enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you all for watching. Peace, shalom, and I'll see you again, family.